When he got the call, Wang Ping'an was genuinely confused, then he laughed. Wang Ping'an, right? Your people are in my hands. Do you have any idea who you just crossed? No idea who you are, but if my people get so much as a scratch, I promise you, it'll be the biggest regret of your life. His voice stayed light, almost bored. He didn't care who was on the other end. If they were serious about hurting him, they wouldn't waste time making threats. Old Jiang, he hung up on me. The younger thug stared at his phone, then shot a helpless look at the old man in front of him. Kid's got a mouth on him, first person who's ever hung up on me. Old Jiang let out a sharp breath through his nose and motioned for his men to call again. He wanted to see exactly how tough this Wang Ping'an thought he was. Not far away, one of the salesmen was dragged forward. Old Jiang studied him with a cold smirk. Your boss. Is he really that impressive? He'll come for me, and you picked the wrong person to mess with. If even a salesman had that kind of spine, the guy behind him wasn't going to be a pushover. Let him go, show him some respect. Old Jiang's voice leveled out, his expression shifted, softening just slightly. Young man, let me ask you something. How long have you worked for Wang Ping'an? 1 month. Learned more in that month than most people do in 10 years, so don't waste your breath trying to get anything out of me. The salesman waved off the question and took a casual sip of tea, relaxed as if he were sitting in his own living room. Call everything off. We'll wait for Wang Ping'an. The room went dead silent. Nobody moved. It wasn't often that old Jiang backed down for anyone. Did I mumble? Old Jiang cast a slow glance across his men. Feng Yang immediately stepped forward and bowed his head. No, sir. But the meeting with the bosses this afternoon, you said it was the biggest deal for our future. Feng Yang's voice stayed careful, reminding him this wasn't a schedule you tore up on a whim. Push it to tomorrow. I've got personal business today. Wang Ping'an didn't make them wait long. No way was he leaving one of his own in someone else's grip. He drove himself to the provincial capital, alone. Hardly anyone knew he was coming. Find me this old Jiang. I'll go straight to him. Wang Ping'an never wasted time on the front end when the back end was already clear in his mind. Number 11 Huihuang Road, the whole strip of grocery wholesalers there belongs to old Jiang. Li Changyu sent the intel fast, his connections in the city ran deep. But heads up, if you show up like this, you might not even make it through the door. More than one friend had warned him about old Jiang. The man wasn't just a heavy hitter. He was unpredictable. An old-school operator who didn't play by anyone's rules but his own. It's handled. I know what I'm walking into. Wang Ping'an ended the call and pressed the accelerator. Took you long enough, Wang Ping'an, I'm guessing? Feng Yang spotted the young man climbing out of a Pega's side. It had to be him. That's right. Wang Ping'an's reply was clipped. He followed Feng Yang inside without another word. The front of the shop was polished and modern, but the back room had a distinct old-world feel. A massive statue of Guangong dominated the center, ringed by incense and offerings. Lean men in black t-shirts lined the walls, their expressions unreadable. Sorry for the surprise. We like to think of it as corporate culture. There was an old saying, it's not the thug who throws punches you should fear, it's the thug who's done his reading. Not bad. Old Jiang clearly has time on his hands. Wang Ping'an's expression didn't flicker. Nothing here fazed him. Inside the office, old Jiang sat behind a broad desk, reading a newspaper. He didn't look up or acknowledge Wang Ping'an in any way. I'm here to collect my people and leave, and I don't want them bothered again. Wang Ping'an motioned for the salesman to go, then old Jiang let out a low grunt, and the whole atmosphere shifted. The men in black closed in. You can take the boy but you stay. Old Jiang fixed a cold stare on Wang Ping'an, something hot and sharp simmering behind his eyes. Fine. Wang Ping'an didn't hesitate. He told the salesman to leave now. He'd handle himself. Whether you're fine or not isn't up to you. It's up to me. Feng Yang stepped forward and slammed a hand down on Wang Ping'an's shoulder. Wang Ping'an knocked it away without even looking. In his old life, he might not have been built for this kind of confrontation, but this body, wrought iron fists, nothing he couldn't power through. This is how you treat your guests. Business skills are weak, and your manners are even worse. You've turned a simple deal into a business taboo. Wang Ping'an's smile was all mockery as he sat down, uninvited, and began brewing tea like he owned the place. Every man in the room stared. They'd seen the same move from the salesman earlier, but Wang Ping'an made it look even more brazen. Young man, I'm older than you. Calling me old Jiang wouldn't cost you a thing. True, and if you want to pull rank, I can't stop you, but since we're on opposite sides of the table, you can call me Mr. Wang. His voice was steady, completely at ease. Surrounded by hostile faces, he didn't so much as blink. I'll give you that. I've met plenty of rich kids, but none with your kind of arrogance. Old Jiang allowed himself a faint smile and gestured for Feng Yang to clear the room. You know why that is? Wang Ping'an met his eyes. Because I'm not a rich kid. I've been at the end of a strong crossbows flight before, and I'm still standing. There was no friction between them now. If anything, the air had turned almost comfortable. You're here. What do you think of my operation? Honestly, you should open a social club, not a business. This whole setup is like a business taboo waiting to happen. Wang Ping'an meant every word. Without the weight of old loyalties, no one would choose to deal with this place. Old Jiang knew it was true. He'd never shied away from hard facts, but no one had ever dared to say it to his face, not even Feng Yang, the man he trusted most. So, following your line of thought, what's the move if I want to stick around for the long haul? That caught Wang Ping'an off guard. Was the old man actually asking for advice? Now they were having a real conversation. You want to know? Then pay up. I'll make an exception and teach you a few things about how real business works. I don't know what your rate is, Boss Wang said, his tone formal. This is my first time at a lecture like this. The fact that the lecturer was a kid in his 20s didn't help his skepticism. Wang Ping'an's attitude stayed casual. 100,000 an hour. If that works for you, we're good. As a top-tier instructor, he knew exactly how to keep a client committed. Boss Wang smiled, asked for Wang Ping'an's bank account, and told Feng Yang to transfer the money. Wang Ping'an didn't touch his teacup until his phone pinged with the payment confirmation. Then he set it aside. First off, your business model is already obsolete. You probably don't even know why so few physical retailers are sourcing from you anymore. He didn't need to think hard to figure out how few channel distributors Boss Wang had left. Most of them stuck around out of loyalty, or because his prices were barely competitive. You're right that I only have 3 channel partners left. And they're all local. We lost any real influence in the provincial capital years ago. Boss Wang didn't dodge the truth. That's market economics at work. You're just a middleman, and your products are outdated. Wang Ping'an leaned forward. Take the best-selling items in the provincial capital. My own launch wiped them out completely. I controlled every advantage. Timing, location, relationships. The product was exclusive, and everyone wanted to be my distributor. You need a new flagship product to stabilize the market, and it's only going to get worse. Middleman margins are a thing of the past. Wang Ping'an smiled. Have you ever counted how many businesses like yours are out there? No, but I know there are plenty. Boss Wang was honest. He'd started early, back when most factories in the capital gave him exclusive supply rights, but the same problem applied. Whatever he had, others had too. What he didn't have, they still had. About 2 years ago, he'd been cut out of the mainstream that he was only hanging on because he still had a voice in his own small territory and, most importantly, capital. None of that matters now. I'll tell you something. 6 months ago, this city had dozens of food and beverage distributors. Now there's only one. Boss Wang sucked in a sharp breath. He had no idea it had gotten that bad. Isn't that one a monopoly? They must be really strong. He was genuinely puzzled that if only one distributor remained in a city, that had to mean solid footing. You're wrong that they're already transitioning. Times are different. That kind of business is just a way to get by now. You can't make real money off it to thrive these days. You have to face reality. Then what do I do with all my storefronts? You've seen how bad our situation is. Boss Wang laid it out. When that sales rep had come through, nearly the entire provincial capital market had been rocked, especially by Wang Ping'an's products. They were practically unbeatable. That's because you never became my distributor. Keep half the shops. Convert them into a trading company or convenience stores. I have other plans for the rest. Wang Ping'an's voice hardened. If you want to change, this is the only way. Keep being stubborn, and not even Jesus can save you. You take care of it from now on. You're my teacher. Boss Wang called Feng Yang and the others in and told them solemnly that Wang Ping'an's daily needs, meals, lodging, security, were their responsibility. Then he made it plain, anyone in the whole provincial capital who dared offend Wang Ping'an was crossing Boss Wang. Wang Ping'an gave an awkward smile. That's really not necessary. I'm here to make money, not stir up trouble. Don't be shy, Brother Wang. They look like big brutes, but they've got good hearts. Boss Wang's expression softened. He explained that these kids were orphans he'd adopted 20 years ago. This place wasn't even a business, it was an orphanage. I'm the 9th child in my family, and I'm the orphanage director. Over time, everyone just started calling me Boss Wang. He laughed warmly. Truth was, Boss Wang wasn't a bad man at all. Otherwise, he never would have treated that sales rep so well. He just wanted to see what the legendary Wang Ping'an was really like, whether his character held up. If you weren't a decent man, I wouldn't have helped you, but now that you've paid me, I guarantee I'll turn things around. Wang Ping'an said the simplest method was to use price differentials. That was the only way to keep the whole market from being price controlled. Of course, it was a dirty trick and couldn't be used too often, or the market would collapse. Low prices hurt too many people's interests and could spark a business war. So clear out your inventory, sell everything, then we'll run the stores with a different model. You could even open branches. He went on to explain that the Japanese had a brilliant concept, using limited space to generate maximum revenue. It wasn't about location, it was about operations. In a modern market, plenty of newcomers' strategies could be adapted. The convenience store model was worth pushing from the start. That kind of market was exactly why so many people were willing to invest. Ping'an would be rolling out a supermarket chain on that scale in the second half of the year if Wang Ping'an launched the model. First, he could cash in. Boss Wang was different from Ping'an. He was an individual. They were a corporation in the provincial capital. One could cover his own expenses. The other targeted the entire city's consumers. That's the difference in consumer groups. Does that make sense to you? It does. I finally see where I went wrong. You're spot on. Boss Wang was genuinely impressed. No one had ever broken it down for him like this. It was only now that he fully understood. Then you can start arranging the next steps. I believe you can handle it. Wang Ping'an's reply was calm. He nodded for Boss Wang to get moving. In this little territory, Boss Wang's words still carried weight. Anyone else would have zero leverage, and sure enough, all afternoon, the area was filled with trucks. Box after box of goods was hauled out, except for that statue of a deity. Consolidate everything into street corner. We can form a cultural media company. I'm not against preserving legacy. At least it gives people something to hold on to. Chen Cheng knew exactly where their heads were. He wasn't about to shatter that illusion. Sure. Xiao Wei brightened. He hadn't expected Chen Cheng to be that thoughtful. By evening, Chen Cheng was still on site running the show. Half the work was sorting clearance stock. The other half was the convenience store's design and layout. For a convenience store, convenience came first. The customer base came second. That meant no unnecessary items on display. Even the drink shelves had rules. You should be able to pull promotion fees from the vendors. Those manufacturers will pay decent money for you to feature their products. Chen Cheng knew the game. Same brand, same section, products got grouped together. So we're using a fridge. Uncle Ju looked confused. He didn't get why they'd need one at this stage. It's a pass-through fridge. The back stockroom lets us restock anytime, and everything stays visible to customers. 8 rows. Each row held 10 different drinks and teas. That alone saved a ton of space. Then came the snack aisle layout. Instead of those old shelving units, Chen Cheng switched to 3 rows of different-sized products, chips first, then bread, then instant noodles. All the fastest-moving daily goods. No one really understood the method, but they trusted Chen Cheng to flip this thing around. Brother Chen, what's the deal with the counter? Uncle Ju was curious now. Chen Cheng had ordered a 13-foot counter that stretched the entire length of the store. A convenience store runs on speed. 2 or 3 registers is all you need. Chen Cheng explained they'd stock everything other stores had, plus things no one else offered. That was the whole point. That was what they were building toward. What Brother Chen's describing sounds seriously upscale, Xiao Wei said, stunned. He'd never seen a layout like this. Couldn't blame him. It was only 2005. Nobody had that kind of foresight. I'll handle the renovations, you get me the crew. Chen Cheng sat down and started listing requirements. Everything had to match his exact specs, equipment pricing, must-have items, the works. Go next door and sort through the inventory. Keep only what's on my list. Clearance everything else. He told them not to worry about taking a loss. Once those expiration dates hit, the stuff was dead weight. Do what Brother Chen says. Move it, everyone. Xiao Wei and his crew were fired up. They worked non-stop. By the time they finished, they'd cleared out enough stock to fill 2 storefronts. People walking by wondered why the place was emptying out. Then they caught on clearance sale, and within seconds, a crowd swarmed in. These people knew a bargain when they saw one. Here come the deal hunters. I guarantee today's sales will shatter the record. Chen Cheng had them haul out every fast-moving item. It all had to go now. But Brother Chen, shouldn't we raise prices? Look at this crowd. Xiao Wei hesitated. Dropping prices this low felt like torching their profit margin. If we're doing this, we commit, trust me. Sure enough, the overnight push wiped out the stored inventory. They moved over $10,000 in real sales. Tell everyone they can grab a free loyalty card. It'll give them a discount when the store officially opens tomorrow. Chen Cheng explained that every cardholder would get 10% off permanently, but he also bumped up the shelf prices. Simple reason, this was a convenience store, not a corner shop. Rent, utilities, maintenance, all of it had to be baked in. Damned so there's no actual discount. Uncle Ju laughed. He had to hand it to Chen Cheng. The method was ruthless. How is there no discount? There's a discount. Chen Cheng grabbed a bottle of soda. This soda retails for $3 normally. I mark it to $3.20. If someone picks it up, they've accepted the markup. 10% off brings it to $2.80. Your actual cost is about $2. He knew this business cold, nothing new to him. You're right, but will we actually get customers? Uncle Ju worried about what would happen once shoppers realized the deal wasn't that sweet. Non-members would have to pay full price. Like I said, if they walk in, they accept the rules. Anyone who doesn't like it can leave. We're not holding a gun to anyone's head. Chen Cheng insisted on zero conflict. They only needed 3 people in the store, 1 cashier, 2 to stock and maintain. Uncle Ju was surprised. He figured a convenience store would need a bigger crew. He was about to call Xiao Wei to start picking people when Chen Cheng stopped him. It's not that I doubt your guys can do the job, they just look too rough for this. Chen Cheng selected a few to be store managers, then told the rest to get ready to open more locations. None of this had been mentioned to Uncle Ju before, but in front of everyone, Uncle Ju played along. Chen Cheng was the only one who could pull them out of this hole. Blind trust was the only path forward. We're expanding already? Uncle Ju asked, puzzled. Where would the new stores even go? I already picked the spots, send someone to check them out later. This whole block is getting turned into a cultural street. Chen Cheng said the 2 sides could become bookstores or tea cafes to pull in foot traffic. Across the street was the historic cultural district. If they held their ground, people would wander over. The storefront sign was critical. That was exactly why he'd positioned the store diagonally across from the main street. That's genius. I think this could work. Mr. Wang isn't an ordinary guy. Feng Yang wasn't the only one. All the men looked at Wang Ping'an with a new kind of respect, but they were still wondering where they fit in. You guys have the skills and the build to do more than just run a shop. I've got a way to get you back on your feet. Wang Ping'an made it clear. These young men needed to get out there and carve their own paths. Besides, old Jiang was still healthy. He didn't need a whole crew looking after him. That's right. Old Jiang backed Wang Ping'an's idea without hesitation. The truth was, he treated these young guys like his own sons. He didn't want them wasting their lives in this tiny bubble. As long as he could still take care of himself, he'd be fine. If something happened to him later, they'd be on their own anyway. Some of you will stay at the bookstore, and no matter how you've been living, I want you to change your ways starting now. Wang Ping'an pointed at a few men and told them to wait for him. The rest of you, none of you can cook, right? I'm sending you to learn in a month. We're opening a restaurant right here. He'd already scoped out the whole street. No restaurants at all. A restaurant was a no-brainer. The remaining men would run a cafe. He wouldn't charge any franchise fees upfront. They could pay him back once they turned a profit. Bullshit. You think I don't have money, old Jiang? Let's keep things separate. I'm paying you for this. Old Jiang was too proud to let Wang Ping'an do it for free. In the end, Wang Ping'an took 100,000 just to shut him up. But you've got sharp eyes, Wang. These are the guys who handle the kitchen. Old Jiang couldn't help laughing. Honestly, Wang Ping'an hadn't guessed at all. The strong smell of grease on their clothes gave it away. They spent a lot of time in the kitchen with those assignments. Everyone had something to do. The only thing left was the sign. So, what about me, brother Wang? That was Feng Yang. He'd noticed Wang Ping'an had arranged everything for everyone else except him. It was driving him crazy. He was a person too. Feng Yang, I need a little more time to figure out where you fit. Wang Ping'an gave a dry laugh. Feng Yang was different from the others. None of those jobs would suit him. Tell you what, you stick with me for now. I'll give you tasks as they come. Just like that, Feng Yang became Wang Ping'an's personal driver. Wang, you know my best guy just got poached right out from under me. I'm starting to think that was part of your plan all along. Old Jiang grinned and waved everyone to sit down. Tonight, They'd have a proper meal, maybe a little, but Feng Yang's different. Is not cut out for business. Wang Ping'an was direct. Feng Yang needed a different kind of role, so he'd hold off on placing him on the street. By now, everyone listened to Wang Ping'an without question. He'd already changed their lives in a big way. Even the bookstore looked nothing like what they were used to. It had this cutting-edge vibe. They'd never imagined a bookstore could double as a cafe. There's no point in running on a single income stream. We need to branch out. Wang Ping'an said these ventures would bring in at least 10 times their current income. That number, everyone sucked in a breath. 10 times. And Wang had said that was just the minimum. If the foot traffic is high enough, 20 times isn't out of the question. Brother Wang, who the hell are you? The more I talk to you, the less I understand you. Old Jiang was genuinely puzzled. He'd never looked at anyone the way he looked at Wang Ping'an. The man thrived wherever he went, and he could see the whole trajectory of things with perfect clarity. It was like everything played out exactly the way Wang wanted. Who I am doesn't matter. All you need to know is I'm doing this for you. Wang Ping'an smiled and added that if he had time, he could teach a few public lectures. Old Jiang should help him find some clients. That wouldn't be a problem. Old Jiang had almost forgotten until Wang brought it up. I've got a lot of friends, their businesses don't overlap with yours. Think they could sit in on a class? Old Jiang said he'd handpicked these people. Old men got sentimental, and he didn't want to see them go under either. Wang Ping'an had wanted to say no, but one look at old Jiang's face changed his mind. He didn't realize it yet. But that one lecture would help him big time later. It would give him a solid backing when he needed to take over the capital city market. Fine. It's settled. Whenever they're free, I'll do a group session. Wang Ping'an grinned and told old Jiang there was one thing he wouldn't compromise on. The lecture fee, of course. You'll get paid what you deserve. We old folks don't shortchange anyone. That night, nobody touched a drop of alcohol. Wang Ping'an said they had important work tomorrow. From now on, everyone should cut out drinking. The next morning, Wang Ping'an dragged himself out of a cheap hotel bed. The mattress was surprisingly hard. Brother Wang, old Jiang wants you to come down for breakfast. Feng Yang knocked on the door, his tone respectful. Got it. Give me a minute to wash up. He figured it would be a simple meal, but when he walked in, the whole table was packed with business owners. Feng Yang, take the brothers to another table. Order whatever you want. Old Jiang waved them off, and the young men sat down elsewhere. Honestly, I'd heard the name Wang Ping'an last month. Never thought you'd be old Jiang's teacher. An old man with a white beard greeted Wang Ping'an warmly. He seemed like a kind soul. You flatter me, everyone. I'm just a good friend of old Jiang. That title is too much. Wang Ping'an's humble attitude won him points. Everyone thought he had good character. Then they launched into a discussion about the capital city's landscape and market. From Wang Ping'an's mouth, they heard a version of the city they'd never seen before. If you hadn't said it, I'd swear my decades of experience were all smoke and mirrors. Everyone burst into laughter, but their eyes held more shock than amusement. What I'm teaching you won't apply right now. Over the next month or two, you'll probably hit the lowest points of your lives, but I promise you, once that stretch is over, things will shift. Chen Cheng was blunt. Everyone's path was different. The key was choosing the right one. None of us have any objections. We've seen old Nine's business. It's solid. They meant every word. The envy in their voices was real. Without that, they wouldn't be sitting here eating with Chen Cheng, let alone listening to him like students. Whatever teacher Chen says, we'll take it. Let's start with you. You were in import trade, but your supply chain snapped during the recent slowdown. Chen Cheng told him to open a fully stocked import food store instead. The old business model was dead. Scrap it. Start fresh from wholesale. The sources and connections were already there. All they really needed was a renovated storefront. The others nodded. Their own shops were cramped too. As for the rest of you, I've already mapped out your plans. I'll write them down in a bit. First, let's talk about what a business hub is and how marketing actually works. For 2 solid hours, Chen Cheng walked them through modern business cases. Most of it was entirely new to them. These so-called business geniuses had never crossed paths with the innovators he described. A lot of them are foreigners. Don't underestimate them. Decades ago, they kicked off the Industrial Revolution. He spoke evenly. The present could learn from the past. That was precisely why he stayed ahead. Teacher Chen, is this really worth it? I feel like I'm sleepwalking. One boss blurted it out, then immediately looked like he'd put his foot in his mouth. I know what you're thinking. It all makes sense, but at the same time it sounds like a fantasy. Chen Cheng laughed. Plenty of people had that reaction. Only a tiny fraction ever succeeded. The difference was simple. Those people dared to think, and they dared to try. That was exactly why their stories were worth telling. So I get it now. It's all business. Actually, it's more than business. There's a lot of theory and practice behind it. Chen Cheng waved a hand. Class was over. If they had questions, the next session would cover them. Was that $10,000 fee worth it? They'd only find out by trying. Over the next few days, Chen Cheng helped them pivot their businesses and took his own sales team out into the field. Most of them were still working on developing thick skin. Deals don't close just because you talk. Pay attention to the details, and I guarantee you'll land a client fast. He changed clothes and announced he was taking the sales team to see how the real world worked. The biggest sports arena in the provincial capital was hosting a world-class expo. Imported goods filled the halls. The crowd was thick. Look at these consumers. Who do you think is the easiest mark? Chen Cheng pointed at the people flowing past, and no one here had a clear agenda. Hard to say. Most of them are just wandering. We don't even know what they need. Figuring it out was simple. People heading toward the machinery section were looking for processing solutions. Almost nobody here was buying for personal use. The ones drifting toward the food stalls were hunting for bargains. A lot of the products hadn't even hit the mainstream market yet. People wanted to try something new. That supplier. I'm going to talk to him. Chen Cheng walked straight up. The man was a foreigner. Didn't matter. His sales team all had college degrees. They'd follow the conversation. Wow, production and wholesale. Think we can work together? The foreigner said his products took half a month to ship from overseas. A local factory could cut that time drastically. Sure. But your product isn't quite polished. What if I improve it and resell it? Chen Cheng told him he'd need authorization first, then the deal would have to go through the higher-ups. His own production line and backing was solid and no issue there. Great, give me your card. I'll reach out after the expo. That was a potential client. The guy hadn't committed on the spot, so they'd have to wait, but waiting didn't mean doing nothing. They could still lay the groundwork. This place wasn't a total waste. Go give it a shot. If you don't close, you're not leaving. Chen Cheng smiled faintly as the sales team scattered. The success rate, low, abysmally low. This wasn't even the right venue for partnerships. The whole premise was off. He'd done it on purpose. These salespeople had gotten too comfortable. They'd forgotten what their real goal was. Mr. Chen, I'd like to talk about working together. And that issue you mentioned, where's the flaw exactly? The foreigner was sincere. He hurried over. It's not a big problem, just not to our taste. Your chocolate has a high cocoa content, but the bitter aftertaste limits your audience. Chen Cheng mentioned he had a chocolate that could compete. If they were interested, They could discuss manufacturing, but OEM work alone wouldn't mean much. He wanted something deeper. A brand agency arrangement. Have you looked into our brand? Chen Cheng hadn't, honestly, but he recited the brand's entire history anyway. He'd done his research. Every detail was sharp. You're the most thorough businessman I've ever met. The foreigner praised him and said this was exactly why he was expanding overseas. If we were just an ordinary company, there wouldn't be much point, but we're not. Cause Food had decades behind it. They'd been pouring money into R&D since the last century. I know all that. And I also know you didn't come here just to promote your products. Wang Ping'an watched the foreign CEO's expression shift. Ziegler's top people understood the legacy issues by now, products that had been around since the last century. No hype needed. The market wasn't buying. But the food wasn't the problem. Then what's the problem? Mr. Ziegler frowned, clearly not following. It's simple. Your operation. Give someone exclusive mainland distribution, and everything changes. Wang Ping'an leaned back. He had a plan, and if they agreed, it would shatter every bottleneck. Ziegler didn't hesitate. He gestured for Wang Ping'an to continue. Right now, no one in China can handle your distribution, except me. Wang Ping'an kept his voice level. I've got a PR team that's unmatched in the country, and I'm the only one with the reach you need. Then if you can represent us, we'll sign a 10-year contract. A 10-year deal with an ordinary foreign company wouldn't have tempted him, but Ziegler's, that was different. Ziegler's had never licensed a distributor in China. Wang Ping'an was about to become the first. 10 years isn't enough. I want 20. Ziegler's lips curved. What makes you think you can get 20 years out of me? Mr. Ziegler, if I didn't have the means, I wouldn't be sitting here. Wang Ping'an gestured toward the convention floor. Look at all those booths drawing crowds, but you're the real star of this exhibition. Because Ziegler's owned the entire expo. They'd been the first foreign company to break into the Chinese market decades ago, yet they'd kept such a low profile that they refused to partner with anyone in the supply chain. Wang Ping'an was here to shatter that silence. He wanted to bury the past century for good. Don't you want to change your situation? Wang Ping'an pressed. Ziegler's is a giant overseas, but you can't afford to walk away from the domestic market. He was right. Anyone sensible could see the logic. And that was the only way to clean up this industry. Fine point 20 years, but fair warning, if you can't deliver, I'll tear up the contract instead of wasting more time. Wang Ping'an smiled. Those were small concerns. He had more than enough tactics to make this work. This was just the first step toward acquiring Ziegler's. Start with PR and distribution, then move into equity. So what's Ziegler's current market share? How many shares are still available? Ziegler laughed. Planning to buy in? Of course, but I heard Ziegler's stopped accepting new shareholders 5 years ago. That leaves me with plenty of money and nowhere to spend it. Wang Ping'an let out a theatrical sigh. I'm not just aiming for Ziegler's. I want to turn the entire food industry into my benchmark, make every consumer know my brand domestic and overseas, without breaking a sweat. But can your products actually break into international markets? That was the CEO's first real concern. He wasn't sold yet. Absolutely. 6 months. 6 months was all Wang Ping'an needed to reshape the brand, production, process, everything, to world-class standards. Those are just words that I can't agree that easily, but I'll offer you a 20% stake in Ziegler's, if you can push Ziegler's joint products onto the global stage within 6 months. Wang Ping'an's expression tightened. Clever. Ziegler was playing word games. I'm not converting my factory into a Ziegler's plant. Ziegler's isn't my final goal. Wang Ping'an spoke with complete honesty. Right now I need distribution rights and decision-making power. After I rebuild the brand, it'll surpass what Ziegler's originally achieved. I'm leveraging your name. The branding shifts from Ziegler's in partnership with Wang Ping'an to Wang Ping'an in partnership with Ziegler's. Two completely different concepts. Fine. I'll give you a trial. The CEO called for his secretary. Half an hour later, the expo booth was packed up. Wang Ping'an followed Ziegler to the mainland headquarters, a glass and steel tower right in the provincial capital. Surprised? Ziegler gestured for Wang Ping'an to sit. Our mainland division is in the capital. I figured holding the expo here meant your headquarters couldn't be far. Wang Ping'an didn't flinch. Now, let's talk officially. I admire you. On our way over, I received quite a few reports about your background. You've impressed me. Wang Ping'an said nothing. How does a man like you, ordinary, quiet for years, suddenly explode onto the scene like flipping a switch? Ziegler leaned forward, curiosity glinting. Is it some kind of awakening? You Chinese and your mystical energy channels. The CEO's love of old kung fu films had clearly rubbed off on his worldview. No, we have a saying, slowly build up, then burst forth. I'm a late bloomer. Wang Ping'an shrugged. Everything I'm doing now is just an old strategy one planned years ago. The timing wasn't right back then. I like your honesty, but we're not here to chat about the past. Ziegler snapped his fingers. His secretary placed a stack of contracts and licenses on the table, freshly drafted. We've never granted distribution rights to any merchant in the world. You're the first. It sounded grand, but Wang Ping'an knew the truth. Between 2001 and 2005, Ziegler's market share had been gutted. The food industry was stagnant without innovation. They were crumbling. He was just in the right place at the right time. I know I'm special, but honestly, without me, Ku Corporation gets eliminated from the market in 3 years. Chen Cheng added, and I mean eliminated by the whole food industry. Eliminated didn't mean sliding downhill. It meant bankruptcy. Complete ruin. The reason was simple. Ku Corporation didn't have a fresh, growing consumer base. At best, one specific generation bought out of nostalgia, no new blood, and Ku would become a tree standing alone, destined to collapse. By now, the message was crystal clear. CEO Ku wasn't an idiot. He couldn't pretend he didn't understand. Go ahead. I'll cover the operating costs, just stabilize Ku's domestic market within 6 months. That was his bottom line. He wanted Chen Cheng to help him pull it off. Chen Cheng glanced at the contract behind him and let a faint smile show. Truth was, Ku Corporation had spent way more time in the mainland market than anyone realized. They just kept regressing. Not because they couldn't compete, their entire model had been phased out by the times. 6 months isn't much for us. Actually, it's more than enough. Chen Cheng was thinking in a different direction. He wasn't fixated on expanding Ku's market share. This setup let him use Ku to boost his own product's visibility, flipping the equation from co-brand to the one everybody wanted to co-brand with. Take those snacks I've got now. If we slapped Ku's name on them and processed them with Ku's techniques, do you think they'd find a market? CEO Ku went quiet. If the products already had a market, no problem. But Ku had never cracked the mainland. Even their years of marketing had been misguided. Changing the packaging and starting over would only treat the symptoms, not the cause. Let's look at the numbers. What's your best-selling product overseas? Chen Cheng smiled and pulled up their data. Candy ranked first, snacks, second. Candy has a wide audience, and you already have flagship products. Things like gum and pop rocks, classic kid stuff. What about chocolate? Ku never developed that. Chen Cheng asked it casually, then told CEO Ku the chocolate era wasn't over. It wouldn't be for decades. That much was obvious. If they wanted real market share, those small items wouldn't cut it. I'll give you a few options. Nut chocolate, filled chocolate, chocolate-coated wafers. See what works for you. If it were Chen Cheng, he'd launch all of them at once. Those were market channels. Attacking a saturated market with a single product was foolish. Multiple products hitting at the same time, that skyrocketed the success rate. That's when he thought about his supply chain from Parrot Town. If they went with nuts, he could ramp up production instantly. I think all three are viable. But what about sourcing the raw materials? CEO Koo said they couldn't import, costs were too high. Don't worry about that. I've got the processing plant right here. You just need to coordinate shipments overseas. That meant one more overseas channel for Chen Cheng, and he could brand everything under his own name. Everything was falling into place. The idle production lines were reorganized. Chen Cheng called old Wang and told him to ship all the machines back. Wow, Boss Chen, what kind of big move did you pull off this time? Old Wang was baffled. Chen Cheng had been talking to foreigners the whole time. These were imported machines. Nothing too big. I'm just proving that following me isn't a gamble you'll lose. Chen Cheng said they'd go over the details once they were back. All workers needed strict training. Quality control couldn't be sloppy. This was a co-branded product, completely different from his original line. IT was for export. Cause QC standards and technology had to be flawless. They might even be more demanding than usual, but Chen Cheng hadn't expected CEO Koo to skip the return trip. Instead, Koo sent a whole team of assistants to do market research. That's funny. He trusts us that much? Old Wang figured the foreigner was easy to fool. You're wrong, these people are the real deal. We can't underestimate them. Chen Cheng directed the factory to start moving things around and swap the signs for Koo's brand. That evening, while the whole plant was being refitted, he called a meeting with all the production line supervisors and managers. The purpose was simple. Teach them how to operate the new machines and drill every quality control detail into their heads. These were the people he'd promoted. They had enough education, otherwise, they'd never have made it to management. A manager without education was unacceptable. Boss Chen, you saying we're going full cold processing this time? Not exactly. The ingredients would still be heat processed, but the final forming would be cold still. To control the temperature, the whole factory would run air conditioning around the clock. It's not that dramatic. Let me start from lesson 1. For the next 5 hours, Chen Cheng drove home one thing. Quality control. Quality control is critical, so I'm setting up a separate inspection department. That way, every machine gets operated properly and in full compliance. Since the machines were foreign-made, they were fully automated. No manual labor required. That freed up the workers. Under normal conditions, they could manage multiple machines at once. Chen, I don't know what your plan is, but it's obvious your workers aren't that dedicated to the job. A couple of the foreigners who'd come along made the comment. They thought the factory's workers were subpar. These are our best workers. They have solid experience and the right attitude. Chen Cheng didn't cater to their opinion. This was his turf. He wasn't about to let them talk down to him. He gave the foreigners a stern look. Fine, check whatever you need to check. He didn't care about the rest. Bro, what are these guys even doing all day? They got nothing better to do. Da Feng was annoyed. From unloading to loading, those men had watched every move. They even scrutinized the machines the second they started up. It's nothing. They can't camp out in there forever, and if they do, that only helps you. Wang Ping'an's point was simple. People need space to work. He couldn't breathe down their necks 24/7. True, but maybe we're not the ones who should be breathing down their necks. Feng Yang pointed out that plenty of the managers spoke enough of the language to follow what the other side was saying. Even better. They're here, so they follow our rules. What? You can't do your job because I'm watching? Wang Ping'an's tone was sharp, irritated. No point dragging this out. They'd deal with the rest later. Right now, he needed the first batch of product and the packaging. Jerry had pitched a packaging design, but Wang Ping'an killed it without a second glance. The reason was straightforward: if he was driving this, it had to match his vision. Jerry's approach was outdated. Chasing that direction now would just burn time and money. I'm going to find Lee Chang-yu, stay on them. If anyone can't keep up or refuses to follow orders, show them the door. Wang Ping'an wasn't short on workers. He never had been. July was almost here. Every summer break, graduates and students flooded the market hunting for temp work. He was the answer to their labor problem. He didn't care what choices they made. Jesus, Wang Ping'an, have you lost your mind? Do you have any idea what time it is? Lee Chang-yu nearly hurled his water glass the second Wang Ping'an walked through the door. It's only midnight. I wouldn't steal your beauty sleep unless it was urgent. Wang Ping'an gave a sheepish grin and tossed him a cigarette. Let me tell you something. I haven't slept in days. This is my first week living in the factory. Lee Chang-yu clicked his tongue, lit the cigarette, and took a long drag. He looked wrecked. You're stressed because business is slow, right? Wang Ping'an didn't need to guess. Most of Lee Chang-yu's production lines were tied up manufacturing his packaging. The demand was so massive that Lee Chang-yu had practically dropped every other client just to serve him. What do you think? I don't even dare ask for payment. Boss Wang. I've turned down so many orders. If all this plastic actually gets used, great, but most clients don't need this stuff. Lee Chang-yu was in a real bind. The material cost was too steep for ordinary customers. Only Wang Ping'an wanted packaging like this. The surplus just kept piling up in Lee Chang-yu's warehouse. I've got new work for you, same material. Inner packaging stays as is, but the outer packaging, print it with my design. Wang Ping'an opened Lee Chang-yu's computer and started laying out the cover design on the spot. You're insane, give me a cigarette. I'm making tea. Wang Ping'an was here now, so Lee Chang-yu knew sleep was off the table. He settled in for an all-nighter. Listen, old Li.do this job right, and you'll be expanding your production lines by the second half of the year. Lee Chang-yu snorted. He told Wang Ping'an he could be as stubborn as he wanted, but there was no way in hell he'd risk everything on expanding. Those were small problems. It all came down to money, and for Wang Ping'an, money wasn't an issue. I can grow your business 10 times over, expand the lines. Wang Ping'an had no interest in taking over Lee Chang-yu's factory. If he wanted to go the distance, he had to bring people up with him. He couldn't do it all alone. There was no possible way to manage every single asset. Lay it on me. Lee Chang-yu's eyes lit up. Wang Ping'an's words had clearly hooked him. This deal is international. As long as your quality control is solid, price won't be a problem. Someone will be visiting your factory tomorrow. Wang Ping'an meant that foreign inspection team, those nitpicking bastards. He had all the time in the world to grind them down. Okay, what do I need to do? But my factory is only so big. Lee Chang-yu still had deep reservations. Landing orders was one thing, he wouldn't be this tense. But he'd never dealt with foreigners before. That was a completely different animal. Just follow my lead. Wang Ping'an glanced at the computer. Finished. Otherwise, they'd have been at this for hours. The next morning, the foreign investors were brought over. Lee Chang-yu treated them with absolute deference. They were his meal tickets, after all. I didn't expect to find such a mature, modern production line here. Your designs are already on par with overseas standards. The praise didn't surprise Wang Ping'an. He'd orchestrated this himself. Of course it was world-class. That same day, Lee Chang-yu signed 3 contracts, all for imported goods packaging. The pricing was so competitive that the foreigners decided to move everything here. Wang, is this your exclusive processing plant? The foreign representative had a playful edge. Wang Ping'an nodded. Yes, this was his exclusive plant. The technology was top tier. He could guarantee the quality here matched the best in the world. Excellent. Here's to a pleasant cooperation. The man shook Lee Chang-yu's hand, confirmed the orders would arrive shortly, then announced they were heading back. Wang Ping'an assumed they were returning to the provincial capital. Turned out, they were flying straight home. With this connection secured, Li Chongyu had nothing left to worry about. Wang Ping'an, I owe you. If you hadn't helped me out, I would have been screwed. Li Chongyu's factory had been running okay, but it lacked real market integration. He couldn't absorb more orders, and his production lines weren't flexible enough for the broader market. But now everything he made had a buyer. That meant his future was finally pointing up. Speaking of which, there's something only you can help me with. Come look at this. Wang Ping'an waved Li Chongyu over to see what he just pulled together. Getting that sketch finalized hadn't been easy. Holy crap. What is that? Li Chongyu froze. The pattern felt fresh, something new, but he couldn't quite place it. Yet the longer he stared, the harder it became to look away. His eyes were locked on it. Held it, I can't get this pattern out of my head. Wang Ping'an wasn't surprised. He told Li Chongyu it was called the law of attraction. What is the law of attraction? These days, nobody can really define it. Wang Ping'an had used that kind of visual impact, even if it still needed refining, but overall, hard to find fault. If nothing goes wrong, today's news is going to hit the factories and the service industry hard. Wang Ping'an sat quietly on the sofa, the tea he had poured untouched in front of him. He knew the whole city was about to blow up. He was right. The first to hear were the service industry operators and small business owners. They couldn't understand why this policy had been enforced so suddenly. Now they were staring down mandatory reforms right on cue. Wang Ping'an's industrial park received full approval and was officially listed. Starting now, this place is the real deal. An industrial park. Swap the sign. Wang Ping'an pulled down the old Pinching factory sign. A bigger, bolder one would go up on the outer wall. Every businessman in the city connected to his circle had already gotten the notice. They didn't have much to fix. From the very first day of the project, Wang Ping'an had demanded strict food safety and production quality. That was his one rule. If they couldn't meet it, there was no point in running a business at all. You chase production numbers first and sacrifice everything else. You think a company like that doesn't deserve to fail? Ziegler rarely lost his temper, but when he came to see Wang Ping'an, he was furious. The dozen or so companies that had been shut down were all his business partners. If his own quality control hadn't been rock solid, he would have been dragged down with them. Alright. I warned you a long time ago. Some people just wouldn't listen. Wang Ping'an smiled and gestured for Ziegler to sit. He wanted an update on the park. Not bad. Speed's good. Our building's foundation is finished. Right now, we're the fastest in the whole park. At least that was something to be grateful for. Wang Ping'an and Ziegler had gotten a head start on development. That was when Wang Ping'an made a decision that he wanted to head south and see things for himself. The sudden plan caught everyone off guard, and no one could figure out why he would pick this exact moment. It's simple. The timing is tight. Those companies just got hit by a storm. They won't bounce back fast. Wang Ping'an explained that the service industry had taken an unprecedented beating. Only by moving now could they seize the opportunity, so they had to act. The sales team had already been called back from other cities. Each person is holding at least a dozen order contracts minimum. Wang Ping'an was satisfied with the results. This time, he was going to Muggy, sweltering Yuju to see the situation with his own eyes. Yuju was hot and humid year-round, practically a poster child for stifling weather. What sold best were cold drinks and herbal teas. The climate had trained people to buy them without thinking. If anyone knows this place, it's me. I went to college here. I know every corner. Wang Feng started rambling the moment they arrived. After all, it was everyone else's first time. Don't embarrass yourself. Feng's picking us up soon. Get it together. Wang Ping'an shot him a look. You don't show off just anywhere. Sales might be freewheeling and light on rules, but still. Everyone's been waiting, right? Let's head to my place for tea and rest. I've already arranged rooms for all of you. Feng Mingdong smiled and herded them into the car. He had rented a spacious Pegasi van to fit the whole group. No need, they can handle their own rooms. If you can't even cover food and lodging in Yuju, I don't think you're cut out for this. Wang Ping'an checked his phone and told them there were still 13 days until payday. He wasn't advancing anyone's salary before that. The sales team stared at him in shock. None of them had expected this. But boss, we didn't bring much cash. Last month's salary is already gone. Wang Feng's complaint was bitter. That's not my problem. Your salespeople, you should know how to make a living on your own. With that, Wang Ping'an nodded to Feng Mingdong. From now on, no handouts. Unless it was a normal business deal. In fact, Wang Ping'an's words gave Wang Feng and the others a hint of a lifeline. If they only focused on expanding the food market, their options would stay narrow. But if they could tap into Feng Mingdong's business connections, they could maintain a high-income lifestyle. Sales wasn't just about pushing one product. They met all kinds of people. They couldn't afford to be boxed in by rigid rules. Well said. I agree completely. So, sorry, guys. Feng Mingdong laughed and urged the driver to go. Still, as a good host, he treated everyone to a meal. He had to fulfill his local duties, after all. Man, the food at your place is amazing. I've never had a local rice dish this fragrant. Wang Feng shoveled food into his mouth. Knowing this was their last comfortable meal, he couldn't help but eat as much as possible. The other sales staff did the same, all of them scarfing down food like they were stocking up. By contrast, Wang Ping'an and Feng Mingdong talked and laughed, truly savoring the moment. Brother Wang, I'm a little older than you, so let me offer some advice. In Yuju, you can make bold moves, but there are a couple people you don't want to cross. One is Huang Baichuan in the south, the other is Old Jiang in the north. Those two old-timers have been entrenched for years. Feng Mingdong told Wang Ping'an these men had deep networks, and with the recent turnover and consolidation, they were on edge. Some industries aren't theirs to control. A lot of it was forced apart, so we don't have much leverage. If Feng Mingdong could run the whole city, he wouldn't have had to travel so far to find Wang Ping'an in the first place. It was because he saw the potential that he was willing to open his first shop here. Look, that's my shop. It opens tomorrow. In Yuju, there were far too many people who loved to eat and drink. Their audience ranged from kids to adults. The campaign hit every age bracket. That was how they'd built such a loyal customer base. Looks like your promotion's working. I see a lot of people already holding flyers. When Xiao said he wasn't wrong. The store hadn't even opened yet, but the crowd outside was massive. Everyone grabbed for coupons. The discounts were too good to pass up. Yeah, giving away my margins is the only play I've got right now. I don't have the nerve to go head-to-head with the big chains. When Xiao knew he was just starting out. Go up against a decades-old industry giant. He wasn't even in the same league. That mindset's fine for now, but you'll need to change it, Chen Cheng said. The whole market's in chaos. I can give you solid footing. Chen Cheng could see Wen Daiping's dilemma clearly. The man was a businessman, sure, but too many constraints held him back. He couldn't fight a real business war. That was exactly why Chen Cheng had come to Yuju, and why Wen had rolled out the red carpet personally. Simple logic, stick close to Chen Cheng, and nothing was impossible. Wherever Chen Cheng went, there was competition. And where there was competition, there was opportunity. Take me to the busiest commercial street later. I need to see the foot traffic for myself. Chen Cheng didn't need to reinvent the wheel right now. There would be another push at the end of the year. For now, It was all about investment that if these shops followed his playbook, they'd see serious returns by December. Plant the tree, let others enjoy the shade. If he had to fix everything himself, he'd burn out. My logistics and food supply chains can handle it. Plus, a lot of partner brands are ready to enter the Yuju market early, Chen Cheng added. They walked a while longer. Chen Cheng asked Wen Shao about old Jiang's location. The further south you went, the better the development. Old Jiang had to be even more anxious than Old Tan. Tan had the south locked down. No big waves there. You're going to Old Jiang's place? When Shao froze that he hadn't expected Chen Cheng to make that move. Everyone knew Old Jiang wasn't easy to deal with. A dying camel is still bigger than a horse. That was common sense around here. Don't worry about that. If I'm walking in there, I've already figured out how to win, Chen Cheng said on the way. When Daiping gave Chen Cheng the full rundown on Old Jiang's business model and assets, so the old-school players had plenty of tricks. After all, IT had only taken one hit this past half-year to land a fatal blow. Alright, I'll go alone. You head back, Chen Cheng said. Chen Cheng waved and got out of the car. He said someone would drive him back tonight, or if he was lucky, he'd stay right here. It wasn't an exaggeration to say the whole commercial plaza belonged to Old Jiang. His stores occupied 70% of it. From a simple landlord to a business tycoon, his story was local legend in Yuju. Chen Cheng muttered the words as he walked. Too bad, half the storefronts are sealed off, and the other half can barely lift their heads. The losses Old Jiang had taken weren't pocket change. A young man shot Chen Cheng an irritated glare. Who are you? You got any right to talk like that here? Chen Cheng almost laughed. What? A man can't speak in broad daylight. My opinions have nothing to do with you. I don't care where you shoot your mouth off, but not on my turf. The guy wasn't backing down. He fired right back. Just then, 7 or 8 men in loud floral shirts closed in around him. Kneel down and speak nicely. Or we'll show you what pain feels like. They moved with the swagger of men used to throwing their weight around. Locals, most likely. Chen Cheng ignored the threats and stated his business flat out. Tell Old Jiang to come out, waste my time, and you'll answer for it. That made the young punks hesitate. They hadn't expected their visitor to be so bold. If he was here for Old Jiang, they couldn't afford to offend him. One of them muttered, "Wait here." After a long moment, a middle-aged man in a tank top walked out, holding a young coconut. You came to see me. I don't recall your face. Old Jiang's tone dripped with mockery. The moment he spoke, the younger men closed in again. My name is Chen Cheng. I can help you fix your current mess. Never heard of you. Every stray cat and dog wants to step on my turf now. Who do you think you are? Old Jiang signaled his men to attack. No second chances. He was fuming. Being humiliated like this in his own domain, he was a titan of the northern city. A tiger brought low might be mocked by dogs, but some nameless nobody daring to make a scene at his doorstep, unbearable. If you want this place to turn around, you'll listen to me, otherwise, you'll end up worse off than Old Tan. I guarantee it. I've already turned Wen Daiping's business around. If you don't believe me, check tomorrow's sales numbers and compare. Old Jiang paused. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. You're Chen Cheng? He asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. So the man knew his name. Chen Cheng didn't bother hiding it in the flesh. Please, come in. Old Jiang's face changed faster than a flipped page. He ushered Chen Cheng inside. Inside, there was premium herbal tea, brewed from scratch using traditional methods. Tell me, Mr. Chen, how do you find the tea? Chen Cheng couldn't help but smile. Only true herbal tea craftsmanship can preserve this refreshing taste, no additives at all. He knew his stuff. This particular brew was as complex as any fine tea. That's right, herbal tea is our staple drink around here. For us, It's what soda is to everyone else. Old Jiang nodded and took a long sip. If I had to guess, your most successful venture was herbal tea, wasn't it, old Jiang? Chen Cheng was testing him. He'd done his homework, when Daiping had filled him in on everything. Yes, the fact that you know this surprises me. Old Jiang wasn't flattering him. It was true. An outsider understanding this much wasn't easy. Then there's nothing to be surprised about. Wang Ping'an said it to old Jiang and meant every word. He was here to save him. Are you serious? Old Jiang stared, bewildered. How could this man be so calm? 6 months ago, he wouldn't have recognized Wang Ping'an if they passed on the street, but after Feng Yang returned from the East a changed man, the entire Yuju business circle had seen the transformation. The phrase people used most often? His eyes held a new light. Dead serious. I can turn your business around in 2 weeks, but your current model is finished. Don't push the commercial plaza forward. Wang Ping'an laid out his terms, 50% equity, and full disclosure of old Jiang's liquid capital. That set off a few of the younger men in the room. They thought Wang Ping'an was putting on airs. Since when did their boss take orders from an outsider? What the hell do you think you're doing? Show some respect. Who are you to talk to old Jiang like that? Did I say something wrong? Wang Ping'an's voice stayed soft. My terms are generous. I wouldn't have brought this up if I wasn't sure. Besides, I could always take this to Boss Wang. He wasn't here to fight. Old Jiang was gambling, betting everything that Wang Ping'an really had what it took to pull him back from the brink. If not, it would all be gone. Mr. Wang, can I ask you something? Old Jiang's expression tightened. Wang Ping'an raised a casual hand. How long have you been in business? 2 months, all told. Wang Ping'an saw no reason to lie. He'd been in business exactly 2 months, however impossible that sounded. What they didn't know was that before his rebirth, he'd spent over a decade fighting in the business world. 2 months, and you've built all this. And you walked away from the provincial capital. The whole Yuju circle tracked Wang Ping'an's every move. No argument there. I guess I'm a celebrity now. Wang Ping'an allowed a small smile. But do any of you know why I'm doing all this? They didn't know the details. He'd kept his investments and the full scale of his assets hidden. All they knew was he was developing new markets, nothing more. Then he mentioned his hotpot empire, and old Jiang froze. You're in hotpot now? What else? I always choose my business model before I make a move. It fits my system. As long as the capital was available, Wang Ping'an never passed up an opportunity. That foundation let him execute his bigger vision. So what do I do now? You've seen my commercial plaza. Barely a commercial plaza. Wang Ping'an's tone was flat. Not even close to what I'd envisioned. The place lacked everything a real commercial center needed. The north side of Yuju wasn't poor, it was second only to the south in development. That wasn't something everyone could claim. Old Jiang had done well early on. He just never locked it in. Think about it. You had all the power, but how many of your stores are still standing? Old Jiang paused. It was true. Once he fell, everything crumbled. It's that simple. You have to change your model, bring in investors. Wang Ping'an proposed giving up the prime locations and launching a price war with a completely new approach. Herbal tea is great, but it only sells locally outside this region. Nobody buys it. Diversification was the key. Herbal tea couldn't rely on standalone stores. It needed mass distribution. I haven't scoped out any local processing plants, but you should already have a mature production system. Old Jiang's eyes widened. Was Wang Ping'an telling him to go retail? Yes, retail. That was the only way to save the commercial plaza. Package the herbal tea in cans, using cold fill technology, and get it on shelves. That's the only way to reach a wider audience. The only way people outside the area will ever taste it. The flavor and texture would need serious work, and time was running out. Competition was already fierce. The market hadn't fully embraced them yet, and they had to be ready for every challenge. Wang Ping'an had succeeded by that same logic. Otherwise, he would have failed back in his home village. I agree with Mr. Wang. We have to change how we do things. The young man who'd clashed with Wang Ping'an earlier spoke up. He told old Jiang they couldn't hold on to everything. Herbal tea had a broad audience, sure, but their craftsmanship was only satisfying themselves. Meanwhile, cheaper brands had already grabbed market share that alone could crush them. Look, several herbal tea shops are already renovating. This is the perfect moment to push your product. That was exactly why Wang Ping'an was ready to invest. If old Jiang followed his plan, Wang Ping'an guaranteed they'd capture the entire national market within a year. Let's do it. Old Jiang slammed the table and stood, his gaze unwavering. Without a second thought, he signed every contract with Wang Ping'an. 50% equity. The brand would carry his name, Old Jiang's Herbal Tea. You've had cola, right? We'll use aluminum cans. Wang Ping'an said the ingredients would be processed with modern techniques, though he admitted he wasn't an expert on setting up the production line. I'll handle that. Don't worry. Old Jiang was a veteran. He knew exactly which strategy to apply, so Wang Ping'an didn't have to stress over that part, and old Jiang didn't want Wang Ping'an covering the initial investment. After all, Wang Ping'an was carrying the heavy load on promotion and sales. Don't worry. I'll invest. Whatever you put in, I'll add 40% on top. Wang Ping'an made it clear he wasn't short on cash and wasn't here to take advantage. This was about building a relationship. Winning together was the only way. Classy. Old Jiang couldn't stop singing his praises. He'd never imagined that his humble herbal tea brand would become his most valuable golden goose. Even now, mention his name and everyone knew him as the herbal tea tycoon. Alright. Let's lock this in. I'll take over operations for your stores. Wang Ping'an had already spotted the empty storefronts when he first arrived. This place hadn't been hit as hard as the others, but it was still bleeding. Convincing customers to keep coming back, that was a skill. Not something just anyone could pull off. Even his own reputation had its limits, so he needed someone who actually knew the terrain. I'm on it, Mr. Wang. I know this area like the back of my hand. Just tell me what you need. The same young guy in the floral shirt from earlier gave Wang Ping'an a quick, respectful nod. Good. You're hired. Wang Ping'an got his name, then sent him out to scout. This commercial plaza had its own ecosystem. Otherwise, old Jiang never would have held it together for so long. Anything that didn't turn a profit got weeded out fast. They were all businessmen. They understood the stakes, so Feng Yang did the legwork for Wang Ping'an. I never realized old Jiang's reach went that far. Every surviving shop belonged to old Jiang's network: food stalls, retail, clothing, accessories, but the locations were weak, and foot traffic was practically non-existent. Trying to copy the provincial capital's model here, impossible. Which means we need a fresh approach, something I can scale indefinitely. Wang Ping'an had total faith in his own methods. He'd already proven them in enough test locations. No reason not to push it all the way now, especially when things were this tight. He didn't even bother asking how things were going back in the provincial capital. Li Changyo's people were fine. Probably thriving. Honestly, that first threshold they'd crossed had laid the foundation for his entire business model. Mr. Wang, what do we do now? If we're talking about relocating shops, that could take forever. Feng Yang explained that sure, these places belong to old Jiang, but they'd been open for years. Suddenly forcing them to move or swap locations would piss everyone off, and even then, there was no guarantee the customers would follow. You're wrong. If they've been sitting in the same spot for years with nothing to show for it, what's the point of staying? The question hit Feng Yang like a wall. He had no answer. Honestly, Wang Ping'an wasn't looking down on them, but if these people actually understood market economics, the whole landscape would look different. That's why you never stop learning. To soak up experience and expand your thinking. Wang Ping'an told him a man couldn't just be someone's errand boy his whole life. Especially a guy like Feng Yang, a small-time crew leader, sounded impressive on the surface, but the reality, he probably didn't even have $200 in his pocket. The gangster era was dead. The only way forward now was to build something of their own. That was the only way to make other people jealous, instead of always being the one envying everyone else. You're right. Feng Yang let out an awkward laugh. He knew Wang Ping'an was telling the truth. He just didn't fully grasp it yet. After a solid hour of scouting, Wang Ping'an issued orders to every single store. His plan was simple: reassign the remaining shops, categorize them, and clearly define their space and positioning. Go explain the details to old Jiang. He'll give you the official word. Wang Ping'an didn't offer anything more. Any objections from the store managers could be ignored from here on out. The power of life and death sat in his hands. Nothing else mattered. Brother Wang, I'm beat. Can we take a break? Feng Yang was drenched in sweat. He watched Wang Ping'an, who seemed completely wired, moving non-stop without a trace of fatigue. This is too much for you. Wang Ping'an laughed. He told Feng Yang his salespeople were way tougher than this. Any one of them could walk all day without stopping, and talk non-stop the entire time. I gave them a shot at conquering the entire Canton commercial market. Not a single penny from me. Give them a week, and you'll hear their names. Wang Ping'an was confident. These were elite picks. If they couldn't deliver in a week, they really should just go home and raise kids. Sales wasn't their path, but if they pulled it off, every major city from that point on would be his for the taking. His team would adapt to any system, getting sharper with every new round. I get it, Mr. Wang. You want me to go into sales? Feng Yang's brain struggled to keep pace. Wang Ping'an sighed. If he'd met this guy later in life, would he have been even denser? Shut up. Don't say another word. Pretend you don't even know me. About half an hour later, old Jiang found Wang Ping'an. The store managers were raising hell, he said. Nobody liked being forced out of their old spots. Fire anyone who won't comply. Honestly, half the reason your model is failing is because of these people. Wang Ping'an cut straight to the point. The managers weren't doing their jobs. If they had been, old Jiang wouldn't be in this mess. But will that really work? Feels like it might just stir up more trouble. Old Jiang hesitated, not about whether he could give the order, but whether these people would actually listen. There's no shortage of talent out there. As long as you're willing to pay, you can find anyone. Wang Ping'an shrugged. Talk about dreams and the future. Sure, plenty of people loved selling the fantasy, but that didn't fly here right now. Only money could steady people's nerves. I understand. I'll get on it. In a single afternoon, the entire north side of the city got flipped upside down. Most people had no clue what hit them before word started spreading. By the time they tried to organize and demand answers, the ringleaders had already been removed. Old Jiang's reasoning was simple. If you don't want to work, leave. He'd pay everyone what they were owed, but after that, no ties. All things considered, his approach was fair. At least it hadn't tainted the whole operation. Who the hell is this Wang Ping'an guy? Let's go teach him a lesson. The store managers had been raking in profits, and now Wang Ping'an had shut down their cash COW'd. No way were they letting that slide. Wang Ping'an wasn't someone you messed with, the guy was capable of anything. Damn right. I'm not swallowing this. I want payback. The lead manager was Feng Yang, and he had a serious grudge against Wang Ping'an. He'd been the first one fired, so he was the loudest. And who exactly are you to talk to me? Wang Ping'an asked, a dismissive smile on his face. A store manager, or just some stranger off the street. He'd seen this kind of scene too many times. It didn't faze him at all. I'm talking to you as the guy you fired for no reason, and you've messed with the wrong person. Feng Yang let Wang Ping'an know his uncle was the top enforcer in the Northern District. A real heavy hitter. If he had to, he wouldn't mind putting another scar on Wang Ping'an's head. That impressive, huh? Fine, have your uncle come talk to me. You don't even have the right to stand here. Wang Ping'an showed no discomfort. He knew this guy was just trying to intimidate him, but if he couldn't handle a nobody like Feng Yang, what could he handle? He might as well throw his hands up and leave everything to old Jiang. Clearly, Feng Yang hadn't expected that response. He couldn't figure out where this guy got his nerve, but he'd already run his mouth. If he didn't do something now, Wang Ping'an would think he was a total pushover. Just wait. I'm going to get my people. With that, Feng Yang stormed out with his lackeys, heading straight for his uncle, Hude. What? Hude was a veteran in the Underworld. When he heard the news, he froze. When did this happen? Who dares to mess with you? They must have a death wish. He couldn't hold back. Feng Yang had embellished the whole story, playing up every detail. Especially Wang Ping'an's contempt. He'd performed it perfectly. You've got some nerve, kid. I, Hude, have ruled this Northern District for years, and I've never met someone with such a big mouth. He gathered his crew and charged out. 3 minibuses sped non-stop toward the commercial plaza. Mr. Wang, you should leave. That kid's connected to Hude. Even old Jiang shows him respect. Dongmi was worried for Wang Ping'an's safety, but he didn't catch the look on Wang Ping'an's face. Normal people would be scared out of their wits, but Wang Ping'an just watched the scene unfold with relaxed ease, almost pleased. He lit a cigarette and took a slow sip of his cold tea. I'll wait for him. As far as I'm concerned, he's no dragon, he's a worm. That line reached Hude's ears just as he arrived. He hadn't expected the guy to actually stick around. You're the one talking about me like that. So cocky. Who's backing you up? Hude asked with a mocking sneer, an iron pipe already in his hand. One wrong word and Wang Ping'an would get it. The thugs from those 3 minibuses weren't just for show. Hude had survived in the Northern District so long partly because of his own skills and partly because of these brothers. Without them, he wouldn't have dared take on just anyone. So you're Hude. I've heard a lot about you. Wang Ping'an smiled faintly, not pausing as he took another drag of his cigarette. Kid, talk to me like that, and you'll end up dead. The moment Hude finished speaking, all his thugs surged forward. Stop, he's one of old Jiang's people. You want to piss off old Jiang? Dongmi suddenly stepped forward. He was genuinely afraid of Hude, but if Wang Ping'an got beaten here, it would be his problem, so he dropped old Jiang's name. Old Jiang, tell him to come here. I want to see which side he's on today. Hude's face was full of scorn. Mentioning someone else here was an insult. No need. I'm more than enough. Wang Ping'an stood up with a smile, walked up to Hude, and clapped a hand on the back of his neck. Hude, I'll give you this. In your own territory, you're a dragon, but without my respect, you're nothing. With that, he grabbed Hude's wrist and twisted hard, making him cry out in pain. Let go, let go. Most people couldn't break that hold. Even experienced fighters wouldn't get caught so easily. You think I'll let go just because you say so? You came here for payback, remember? Wang Ping'an smiled. This small-time player wasn't worth his time, but he had no intention of letting go. You wanted payback, he said. Now treat me right, and maybe I'll let you off easy. Hude's mouth kept running. Listen. If you don't let go now, I swear you'll die a miserable death. His men were all around point one order and they'd swarm. Is that so? Let's see who here dares to stand up for you. Wang Ping'an twisted his wrist again, and Hude curled up in agony. All he could feel was that his wrist no longer belonged to him. Only then did Wang Ping'an release him. Hude, aren't you going to treat me right? I'll give you a chance. I don't care what went on between me and your nephew, but the fact that you came after me, how are you going to settle this? Looking into Wang Ping'an's eyes, Hude's heart seized. He'd never seen a look like that, like it could swallow him whole. He stammered, unable to find words, finally promising he'd make things right. Immediately, he ordered his men to work over his nephew until Mr. Wang was satisfied. Hold on. I don't like others doing my dirty work. Wang Ping'an smiled and told Hude to do it himself. I want to be fully satisfied. Hearing that, Hude hesitated. Hurry up. I don't have all day. You don't want me to embarrass you, do you? Even though Wang Ping'an had only shown one move, everyone around was on edge. If this guy could overpower their boss, they weren't about to cross him. Fine. Hude walked up to his nephew Feng Yang, took a deep breath, and raised his hand to strike. Uncle, you can't hit me, not you. Feng Yang nearly wet himself. He never saw this coming. Yeah, I'm your uncle, but tonight you screwed with the wrong person. You earned this. Hude didn't give a damn about blood being thicker than water. Would one slap even land the point? No, Wang Ping'an was watching. He couldn't afford to pull his punches. The first slap set Feng Yang's cheek on fire, the second put him flat on the ground, out cold. Satisfied now? Hude's glare locked onto Wang Ping'an. The message was clear. Quit while you're ahead. He'd done everything asked. Pushing harder would only bring bad luck to both of them. Are you telling me what to do? Wang Ping'an lifted an eyebrow. What game was this guy playing? Testing him? I wouldn't dare. I'm only asking if Mr. Wang is willing to leave it here. Fine. Take your trash and get out of my sight. Don't let me catch your shadow around here again. Wang Ping'an waved him off, irritation flickering across his face. Wasting time on these lowlifes was a waste of breath. By the time old Jiang rushed over, it was already over. He stood there, stunned. Who had smoothed things over for Wang Ping'an? Hude wasn't the type to roll over. That man had been a thorn in his side for years. The only reason the peace had ever held was old Jiang's nephew working for him. Mr. Wang, are you all right? Old Jiang asked, his voice tight. I'm fine. Hude's the one with a problem. Li Changyu forced a laugh. The only thing he could say was that Wang Ping'an had moved with some kind of divine luck. Nobody could explain exactly what happened. One moment Wang Ping'an had Hude by the throat, and the next, the man folded like wet paper. Hude caved? Old Jiang wasn't the only one lost. Everyone standing there was stunned. In all of Yuju, nobody had ever made Hude kneel. Even old Jiang could never get the upper hand on him, but Wang Ping'an just had. If not for the lack of a single scratch on Wang Ping'an, and Li Changyu's airtight retelling, the whole crew would have sworn Wang Ping'an had the devil's own luck. Old Jiang didn't need to dig for proof. A text buzzed in from Hude. Tell old Jiang to treat Wang Ping'an right, or I'll paint this town in chaos if I find him still breathing in Yuju. That bastard, he can't go after Wang Ping'an directly, so he comes after me. Old Jiang's face reddened as he shoved the phone toward Wang Ping'an. So that's how it is. Wang Ping'an didn't look impressed. He'd spotted the venom in Hude's eyes the second the man surrendered. From the first hit to the final blow, the resentment never faded. The man would swallow his pride to buy time. But everyone knew you don't let a wounded tiger limp back into the jungle. And now that tiger was circling back for him, Hude was smart. He knew exactly when to strike. This was his best window to gut Wang Ping'an. If he could turn a profit while doing it, Wang Ping'an would be bleeding out. Before he knew what hit him, Yuju isn't as simple as you think. I've been running these streets for years, nobody punk swaggers in and brushes me off that easy. Even if Hude could choke down the insult, his men wouldn't. Boss, we've never been humiliated like this. We gotta make sure Wang Ping'an carries the scar forever. His guys had been ready to lunge earlier. If Hude hadn't kept a lid on them, they would have torn the place apart. Hearing that only made Hude's blood pressure spike. He wanted to crack every last one of their skulls. Are you idiots just running your mouths? You trying to get me killed? He waved them off with a crude gesture. His head was a mess of noise. Boss, why get so wound up over a small thing? I've got a plan for Wang Ping'an. When Hude saw the man stepping forward behind him, the grin broke through before he could stop it. With this guy in the room, there was no way he'd come out on the losing end again. Young Master Wu, it's damn good you're back. You have no idea how much we need a sharp mind like yours right now. Young Master Wu's face stayed cold, unreadable. I don't know if you want to hear this, but the current business model doesn't fit us anymore. Still, we can't let Wang Ping'an beat us to the punch. On the surface, young Master Wu was looking out for Hude, but behind him stood the full weight of the Shun group. He came back for one reason, to crank the tension between Hude and old Jiang until it snapped clean. Only when they erupted into all-out war could he walk back in and claim what was left. So what's your move? Hude was all fists, no filter strategic thinking. Forget it. He wasn't a businessman. He could barely read a contract. Dragon, everyone in Yuju knows what you're capable of. We can shove Wang Ping'an out of the picture entirely. Young Master Wu laid it out. Wang Ping'an only set foot in Yuju because of old Jiang. His arrival was about to tilt the entire region's balance of power. And of course, old Jiang would climb right up with him. When that happened, old Jiang would be the one swimming in cash, with his whole crew riding the wave behind him. You're telling me I've got a real shot at being the boss? Hude didn't grasp the full chessboard, but he smelled the money. Young Master Wu's breakdown was dead on. Wang Ping'an's arrival was the only bridge giving old Jiang access to this kind of power. Exactly, and I have the connections to make it happen. Young Master Wu told Hude that when the timing was perfect, he'd put the boss himself in front of him. Then Hude could step out of the gutter and become a legitimate businessman. Nice. You've got a real head on your shoulders. My men are just dead weight circling the drain. Everyone loves being told they're the prize. Hude was already sold on young Master Wu. He caught himself daydreaming about sitting in the big chair, grinding every rival in Yuju beneath his heel. First step, dismantle every lifeline old Jiang has left. Young Master Wu hadn't clawed his way to this height by being useless. Making two street leaders dance to his rhythm wasn't easy, but he made it look that way. Mr. Wang, why would the Shun group suddenly offer to buy my Futian building? And they're even fine with the property deeds as they are. Old Jiang stared at the message, his brow furrowed deep. The price they quoted was too good to trust. Don't bother. Don't agree to anything. Whatever they promise, ignore every word. Chen Cheng knew exactly what kind of trap this was. Why wait until now? Why start throwing cash around the second he decided to shake things up? Did they honestly think he was an idiot? But the look on old Jiang's face said the man was actually weighing it. Cut some losses, walk away clean. Maybe not the worst deal on the table. Don't kid yourself. I'm your shareholder, remember. I get a say, and I'm not signing off on any of this. Chen Cheng's voice yanked old Jiang straight back to reality. If the other side tried to push a breach of contract claim, he'd demand the full penalty. Every last cent. Old Jiang shut his mouth. With Chen Cheng standing right there, he had no argument left. Even if you offload those dead-end storefronts or dump the whole food court, who do you think ends up owning Yuju? Chen Cheng let out a cold laugh. Old Tan would have zero competition. North District, South District, all his. Old Jiang was only looking at the short-term payout. The long-term profits would vanish, just like that. Damn. You're right. How'd I miss that? Old Jiang muttered, sinking deep into thought. If it isn't yours, don't touch it right now. We hold our ground against Old Tan. He wants a buyout. He can wait. Chen Cheng never let an opportunity slip. The stakes were climbing, and there was no way he was bowing out now. He'd only been in Yuju one day. I'm actually curious what tomorrow brings, but it looks like the out-of-towner already backed off. Chen Cheng hadn't seen any counter-move from the outsider. That meant someone had reined him in and done a thorough job. It sure wasn't his own people, so it had to be on the enemy's side, which meant someone was desperate to shift the focus away. Old Tan. Chen Cheng's gaze settled on the Tan Group building. Old Tan was the only one who'd pull a stunt like this. You're telling me Old Tan is behind all of it? Old Jiang wasn't buying it. Old Tan wasn't any sharper than him. There was no way the man had that kind of foresight. None. Want to bet? I guarantee Old Tan tests the waters tonight. And tomorrow, he invites you for tea. A faint smile crossed Chen Cheng's face. Fine. If even one of those doesn't happen, you lose. Old Jiang was already banking on Chen Cheng handing over 25% of his shares. High stakes. Chen Cheng wasn't about to let that slide. So you're ready to lose 25% to me? Winning meant taking shares, losing meant giving up his own. Chen Cheng made sure the terms were crystal clear. A gamble. Take it or leave it. Old Jiang, on the other hand, looked sick with worry. Relaxed. It's only 25%. Chen Cheng waved a hand like it was pocket change. You have no clue what this means to me, but do you understand what happens if we lose? Old Jiang threw up his hands and walked out. Not long after, his phone rang. Old Tan competitors, sure, but they still had each other's numbers. Hey, old friend, how about some herbal tea? The invitation felt eerily familiar. Old Jiang froze. He'd heard those exact words before somewhere. No. I'm tied up. Another time. He hung up, leaving Old Tan staring at his phone in disbelief. Xiao Zong, what the hell? He hung up on me. Old Tan's glare pinned Xiao Zong in place. The man flinched. I don't know. I laid everything out for him this afternoon. He agreed to our terms. There shouldn't be any problem. Xiao Zong had suggested they meet Old Jiang for tea tomorrow, smooth things over, and lock in the deal for those commercial plaza stores. Once that was done, the Tan Group would be unstoppable. Everyone knew that Old Tan had thrown in every resource he had. He wanted to force Old Jiang's hand and seal Yuju in his grip. The other business owners would have to dance to his tune. Refuse, and they'd be cutting off their own income. After the latest economic shakeup, everyone was walking on eggshells, scared to death of ending up the same way. What is that guy playing at? He actually called me for tea. Old Jiang was stunned, but Xiao Qiong, standing beside him, wasn't surprised at all. After dealing with Chen Cheng long enough, he'd learned that the impossible always had a logical explanation. Whatever Chen Cheng predicted came true. No other outcome existed. That was exactly why they kept moving forward. And Chen Cheng, he wasn't hiding anywhere. He was at the largest coffee shop inside the Tan Group building, calmly sipping his tea. You think this place turns a profit? He smiled at Wen Daiping. No chance. Look at the foot traffic. Barely a handful of people. Wen wasn't impressed by the prime location. He wouldn't take this spot for free. Rent and operating costs alone were enormous. Even doubling the current crowd wouldn't cover payroll. You're reading it wrong. Haven't you noticed the kind of people walking through those doors? Chen Cheng had been watching. These weren't ordinary customers, polished appearances. High spending habits. Dropping 10 grand meant nothing to them. If they weren't signaling loyalty, why else would they throw money at Old Tan like that? He didn't need to overthink it. Chen Cheng had already put the pieces together. Is that really a thing? Guess I've been out of the loop. Wen let out a dry laugh. He hadn't considered that angle. If it was true, the South District's influence was shifting toward the center fast. A lot of Old Tan's operations run that way. With Old Jiang shutting down, those businessmen are even more convinced he won't survive. Wang Ping'an wasn't making anything up. That was just the plain truth. Any normal person would see it the same way. If Old Jiang still had the strength to keep going, why would he shut down? And today, he'd crossed the Hude because of Wang Ping'an. Unless he was truly out of options, he would have already made peace. So who should we be backing in Yuju right now? A few bosses nearby lowered their voices. This was part of the test, too. General Manager Liu, obviously. You haven't noticed we aren't the only ones bringing money in these past few days? The middle-aged man smiled. When things get messy, picking a side is everything. Lock in that connection, and the rest falls into place. Miss it, and you're just throwing your effort away. Feng Mingdong is right. Another chimed in. We need to move fast, at least pledge loyalty before the tide turns completely. They'd already become die-hard Liu loyalists, and more people were following their lead. You both make good points, Li Changyu said, but there's one thing I don't agree with. He leaned in. There's still an unstable factor. Wang Ping'an. A ticking time bomb who's been in Yuju only half a day. He let the silence hang. He managed to throw the whole north side into chaos. You know the Hude, right? Wang Ping'an took him down. At that, everyone sucked in a sharp breath. They'd had no idea. The Hude considered it too humiliating and had deliberately kept word from spreading, but this city had no walls. Every detail had already leaked across Yuju. If that's the case, then Wang Ping'an really is something else. Their conversation stayed quiet, but Wang Ping'an caught every word, clear as day. All right, let's not worry about that. My vote is still to stay neutral and see how things develop tomorrow. They had some respect for Wang Ping'an now. Before, it hadn't been necessary. But the key was that Wang Ping'an had guts. He could steady Old Jiang and shut the Hude up without a word. Not everyone could pull that off. Fine, we'll wait and watch, but you need to lay out the whole power structure for us right now. They needed to see which way the other bosses leaned. If only the few of them stayed neutral, they'd end up offending both sides. Better to just pick one, burn that bridge completely, and when the other side rose, they'd be sitting pretty. They chatted a little longer, then got up and left, never noticing Wang Ping'an and Feng Yang on the other side. Brother Wang, what do you make of all that? Feng Yang almost laughed. Those guys really had some tricks. Staying neutral, that was a pure business move. Never gamble with your own lifeline. I don't have an opinion. I just think it's time to drop a bombshell. Wang Ping'an took a slow breath. Tomorrow, I'm going to acquire 25% of Old Jiang's shares. At that point, I'll be calling the shots at the commercial plaza. Then I'll use the gap to pull the Hude onto my side and spread the word I'm moving into the south side of the city. What? Feng Yang nearly spilled his coffee. This was insane. Nothing to be surprised about. I'm telling you, the Hude is easy to win over. All brawn, no brains. Wang Ping'an already had 100 ways to make the Hude obey him without repeating a single one. And the guy wouldn't dare complain. That was Wang Ping'an's skill, and no one else had it. True, But do you really have a guaranteed win? I'm worried about this. Feng Yang admitted he was genuinely cautious. If the Hude got hot-headed and decided to go down swinging, they'd lose their only shot. And if they failed, Old Tan and his people would catch on, and the whole situation in Yuju would get even more tense, bad for everyone. Relax. I don't need to overthink this. In fact, Wang Ping'an had gotten the Hude to come to the commercial plaza with just one sentence. Wang Ping'an, if you want peace, you could grovel a little. I'll give you a chance to behave, the Hude said, laughing. He really hadn't expected Wang Ping'an to call him. He'd been excited enough to come running without any of his men. Hude, you're a well-known figure in Yuju. A lot of bosses are gossiping about our little feud. You want to settle it? That was Wang Ping'an for you. He hit the nail on the head and made the Hude realize the core issue. That was exactly it. If those bosses hadn't been whispering behind his back, he wouldn't have come in person. Tell me your solution. Listen, Wang Ping'an, if you can clean this up cleanly, I swear we'll be friends forever. The Hude thumped his chest. He meant it. It's simple, you just need to tell everyone you're my younger brother. Wang Ping'an smiled and took a sip of herbal tea. It felt good. A tea that. The Hude slammed the table and shot up. Wang Ping'an, are you messing with me? Why would I mess with you? If you were my older brother, then me beating you would mean you disgraced yourself. That's why you have to be the younger brother. Wang Ping'an explained that way, no one would gossip. In fact, he could even help him rise. Not everyone was cut out for the streets forever. A critical moment, you had to grab the chance to better yourself. Becoming a real boss was what they should be doing now. Especially with your reputation and status, Hude. I think you're just missing a guide. Wang Ping'an's words struck home. The Hude never expected him to lay out so much logic in one go, and then he spilled everything about Wang Fengbua. Brother. The word came out fast. Good. I heard you have a subordinate named Wang Fengbua. Wang Ping'an's smile sharpened. He wanted to know exactly who this Wang Fengbua was. Li Changyu knew all about young Master Wu's background. Yuju wasn't that big, and people talked. He knew every detail, including how Wu had landed at the Shun group later on. He just never brought it up. You needed an exit strategy in this business. Lay everything out at the start, and nobody wanted to deal with you, so that troublemaker is behind this. I should have guessed. Feng Yang laughed, the sound catching Li Changyu off guard. Why are you laughing? Did I miss something? Li Changyu frowned. He didn't see the humor. It's simple. Wu thinks he's clever, so we'll use him as our entry point. Feng Yang's mind was already made up. He was going to teach the man a lesson as chief advisor to the Shun group. Young Master Wu lived large. A chauffeured Pegasi took him everywhere. Even the small-time bosses around town didn't get that kind of treatment, and his swagger showed it. Wait here. I'll talk to them. Wu pulled open the car door and stepped out. He'd been circling this club for weeks. Finally, a real chance to seize it. Li Changyu had made the connection. Without that, he never would have gotten this far without friction. I've got an appointment with your boss. He waved off the security guards and strode inside. Mr. Wu, an honor. You could have sent someone. No need to come all this way. The owner beamed. This was the big boss's favorite. You didn't cross him, just checking in first, to deliver the boss's message second, to find out when you'll be ready. Wu didn't need to butter anyone up. People came to him, and there was no other choice. I'm not sure I follow, Mr. Wu. The owner played dumb. That got under Wu's skin. What's your angle, Boss Wang? That's not what you told me before. He wasn't an idiot. He could see the runaround for what it was. The man was jerking him around, and Wu let the anger show. Relax, Mr. Wu. I've always been in your corner. The owner patted his shoulder with a smile. He didn't spell it out loud, but the message was clear. Don't try anything cute, or this club of yours will have serious trouble. Wu marched out of the office. He'd said his piece. If Boss Wang moved against him, he'd bury the man. Looks like Wu has a problem with you, Boss Wang. Feng Yang stepped out of the private room, grinning. He'd arrived half an hour early and had an excellent conversation with the owner. Mr. Feng, you know I don't get rattled by things like that. Besides, your advice is solid. Feng Yang had made real moves. He'd secured a 50% stake in the club by promising to shatter its weekly revenue record. Here's the list. Move fast, start planning the branch. Feng Yang's core point was that most people still didn't understand what a modern place could be. The old-school karaoke format was dead. To succeed in Yuju, they had to flip the whole concept. Your equipment is ancient. We can't waste this location. Feng Yang estimated the initial overhaul at around $20 million. How long will that last? Boss Wang's voice tightened. $20 million wasn't pocket change. 5 to 7 years after that, swapping out components is easy. Feng Yang explained the speakers were fine. It was mostly renovations and new electronics. Chump change. Really, once cash started flowing, the upfront cost wouldn't matter. You had to spend money to make money. Alright. We'll follow your plan. Get on the phone with those suppliers, now. Boss Wang didn't hesitate. He had zero doubts about Feng Yang. By the way, Mr. Feng, you mentioned a branch. What's the model look like? We expand using your club's name. A franchise model. Not just Yuju, I want this nationwide. Feng Yang laid it out. That was how local brands went national. Right now, the only real competition against imports was the southern business machine. The Pearl River Delta earned its name for a reason. The economy and the tech were miles ahead, and the locals had money. Investors were everywhere. The critical point. Feng Yang held the franchise rights. He didn't want to manage day-to-day operations, so he'd retain a 50% stake. I see. Mr. Feng, I had no idea your vision ran this deep. Boss Wang had once considered young Master Wu a real talent. After meeting Feng Yang, the difference felt like comparing a puddle to the ocean. Two completely separate leagues. And Feng Yang was the one who would always come out on top. Alright. Feel free to tell the others about today's discussion. I don't mind if they want to talk to me directly. Feng Yang gathered the proposal and contract and stood. No reason to linger. 30 minutes. He had covered everything except the grand opening and ongoing operations guidance. The moment Boss Wang started ordering new electronics, the other bosses got restless. They recognized that Feng Yang's presence would shift the entire landscape and lead them all to a win. So Boss Wang accepted Feng Yang's terms. Half the shares. What do you think? Wu Dao couldn't hold back any longer. He needed Feng Yang's help too. He'd never seen Boss Wang respect anyone enough to follow their lead without a single question. What are you waiting for? Invite him to dinner. After a quick discussion, they pooled their money for a lavish feast and reached out to Chen Cheng. Getting his contact info was easy. Yaro Jie knew Chen Cheng wanted to get the word out, so he stepped in as the middleman. These bosses could help him drive down prices. A win all around. He'd help them, and they'd help him right back. Mutual benefit was the name of the game these days. The plan made perfect sense. When Mr. Chen arrives, stay sharp. We can't have him thinking we're a bunch of deadbeats. That kind of talk stayed strictly private. Pan Zi was spearheading the whole thing, and he didn't want a single thing going wrong. If it did, even old Jiang couldn't protect them. Mr. Chen said he's tied up with business today and can't make it. He's treating this meal as his gift to all of you. Xiao Qiong had already settled every bill. Chen Cheng wasn't about to rush into building connections with these bosses. The logic was simple. If he didn't make them wait a little, everything would come too easy. This, Pan Zi hesitated, caught completely off guard. He hadn't heard Chen Cheng wasn't coming. He shot a quick look at Yaro Jie. Yaro Jie was sharp. He pulled out his phone and dialed Chen Cheng. The line was busy. It really did look like Chen Cheng couldn't take the call. Brother, where's Mr. Chen? If he's not coming, I can't eat this in good conscience. Pan Z's words drew nods from the other bosses. Every one of them wanted to find Chen Cheng personally. If he wasn't coming to them, they'd go to him. Have your people prepare gifts. We'll visit Mr. Chen ourselves. The bosses got moving. Meanwhile, Chen Cheng was playing chess with old Jiang. Chen Cheng, what's your game? Those bosses rolled out the red carpet because they want in with you. Standing them up like this, not the smartest move, is it? Old Jiang thought the excuse was way too thin. What's wrong with it? In chess, you can't lose focus. Point one slip, and it's checkmate. Chen Cheng made his move and wiped old Jiang off the board. Beaten, old Jiang had no comeback. He just reset the pieces for another round. Xiao Qiong returned and filled Chen Cheng in on everything. Right on schedule. Not surprising. Chen Cheng knew those bosses wouldn't give up that easily. The most direct next step, show up at his door. There was no simpler play, so they'd buy gifts and come knocking. They'll be here soon. Get ready. Chen Cheng stood and walked to the company entrance. He told the logistics team to bring out all the herbal tea aluminum cans, no labels, nothing special to look at, but the taste was decent. We're used to fresh brewed. Will this really pass? Old Jiang was skeptical. He worried the flavor would fall flat and hurt their reputation. Let me put it this way, even at its worst, this tea can't be worse than what the Tan Group is pushing. Chen Cheng was dead sure of that. If he hadn't been confident, he never would have switched to the modern production model. Glass bottles were outdated, aluminum was cheaper, lighter, and key point, it resisted oxidation, so the taste held up better. Is Mr. Chen in? Please let him know Pan Zi has come with a few close friends to pay a visit. Pan Zi made sure to put his name front and center. Being first always left the strongest impression. He wanted to grab Chen Cheng's attention. That Pan Zi never misses a chance to steal the spotlight. Chen Cheng couldn't help but laugh. He knew exactly who Pan Zi was. They'd met at the coffee shop before, and when Daiping had already given him a thorough rundown of their backgrounds, family histories, how they'd built their businesses. Only a true local from Yuju could dig up those kinds of details. So, do we let them in? Xiao Qiong hesitated. Chen Cheng's attitude wasn't crystal clear. Let them in. Why turn anyone away? We're businessmen. You keep the doors open for business. Chen Cheng laughed and motioned for old Jiang to join him. A little face-giving went a long way. Old Jiang was puzzled. Why go out to welcome them? Just let them come to the office and save some face. But the moment he saw how Chen Cheng handled it, he realized how narrow his own thinking had been. Chen Cheng treated those bosses like old friends he hadn't seen in decades. Every face wore a smile, and nothing felt forced. Everyone says Boss Chen is a once-in-a-generation talent. Today I see it's true. Pan Zi laughed and offered up the gifts he'd prepared. That's an antique, isn't it? 8 treasure glaze, if I'm not mistaken. Chen Cheng didn't even pick it up. He just glanced at it and identified the piece. Pan Zi sucked in a breath. He hadn't expected such a sharp eye, but the piece was genuine, no fake there. Impressive. Emma. Chen Tai tea is indeed 8 treasure glazed. I brought this because I'd like to be friends. Chen Cheng didn't look surprised. An 8 treasure glaze piece was worth over $1 million. For Pan Zi to hand over something that valuable, he had to want something. Nobody made a move like that without a reason. We'll get to that later, but this piece, Chen Cheng let his words trail off, his attention shifting to a piece of white jade. The quality and color were flawless, so perfect, in fact, that Chen Cheng stared at it for a few extra seconds. That's from brother Xiao. He's a bit shy, didn't dare come up and greet you himself. Pan Zi laughed and pulled Xiao Qingyu forward, a middle-aged man in glasses. Boss Xiao, are you having financial trouble? Or is there something else you're not telling me? Chen Cheng raised an eyebrow, his tone cutting. No, how could that be? Cold sweat beaded on Xiao Qingyu's forehead. He looked completely helpless. If this mutton fat jade is a fake, how would you handle it? Chen Cheng couldn't help but laugh. He patted Xiao Qingyu on the shoulder and gestured for everyone to sit down. Either way, genuine or fake, he wasn't interested. Seeing the guy hesitating to speak, Pan Zi gave him an angry shove. Mr. Chen is asking you a question, spit it out. That sudden shove caught Xiao Qingyu off guard. He had no choice but to nod meekly. I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, I didn't expect you to spot it with one look. Yes, it's a fake. Everyone gasped. Before they had prepared the gifts, Pan Zi had warned them that no one could screw this up. They were all in this together, but someone had still slipped, and on the most critical layer of the plan. Now there was no time to distance themselves. The damage was done. I don't actually care about fakes, Chen Cheng said. What I'm really interested in is your business. He explained that a businessman didn't have to be completely honest. After all, nobody does anything for nothing. If every businessman were totally transparent, they might as well run a charity and forget the profit. A businessman needed to understand that. But honesty was essential when dealing with partners and collaborators. If someone played games at a critical moment like this, that company clearly didn't have a future worth pursuing. You're right. I realize the problem now, Mr. Chen. You won't hold it against me, will you? Xiao Qingyu admitted his finances were tight right now. It was a last resort. I won't hold it against you. Take this jade back, and take back all the other boss's gifts too. Then Chen Cheng invited everyone to sit down and started talking business. You've got representatives from every industry in Yuju here today. I don't have much talent, but I want to lead all of you in changing the city's business landscape. Chen Cheng told them to pull out the contracts they'd prepared. He wanted to take a close look. Each contract was pretty much the same. They all promised him a 50% stake. But 50% meant nothing without real value. If a company had no growth potential, no capital, no future, then holding 50% was just holding a hot potato. Not only would he have to worry about all the trivial details, he'd have to pour his heart and soul into keeping the business alive. Honestly, none of that appealed to him. He needed to choose carefully. I've already looked into your companies. A few of you can sign contracts directly, but I'm changing the terms. Chen Cheng said that offering a free 50% showed real sincerity, and it didn't cost him a penny. But the cost of operations and planning wouldn't be small. In other words, the value he would bring to the company far exceeded what was being offered. So, Mr. Chen, you're asking for a higher stake? Pan Zi caught on quickly. He was ready to make a concession. The ones I've selected will get 65%. We'll talk about the rest later. Chen Cheng said those contracts just needed a few tweaks before signing, but one thing had to be clear. Operational control stayed with him, no problem. Pan Zi agreed enthusiastically. He didn't want to miss this golden opportunity. 3 contracts, all at 65%. The other bosses were left out. Some couldn't accept the terms. They argued that giving up too much equity and control was like handing over their companies. They weren't willing to do that, so naturally they refused Chen Cheng's demands. All right then. I won't see you out. Chen Cheng smiled and waved them off. Only 3 people remained, including Xiao Qingyu. Mr. Chen, my company is running pretty well right now. There's something lacking? Xiao Qingyu was telling the truth. His order volume was huge. All his competitors envied that. Even bosses from other industries wanted to partner with him. Your prices are too low, too much labor cost with no real advantage. But those are the conditions of the industry. Prices have never been high in this line of work. Xiao Qingyu looked embarrassed, but Chen Cheng had hit the nail on the head. Despite high volume, his profit margin was razor-thinned. 100,000 a year in net profit was a stretch. That's why he'd tried to pass off a fake. Your company has serious issues. Simple optimization won't fix it overnight. And that 50% you promised me, it's basically an empty check. Chen Cheng put it bluntly, 50,000 a year for him, was he that idle? So he turned Xiao Qingyu down flat and told him he needed to pivot. If he couldn't accept that, his only future was bankruptcy. The current industry structure was rigid. Forget about competition, the existing conditions alone made it impossible to refuse. I understand. Let me go home and think it over. Xiao Qingyu bowed to Chen Cheng, then hurried out of the office. The other two bosses' problems weren't as severe, that they'd just been going in the wrong direction. Chen Cheng advised them to take bigger risks and learn from their mistakes. Business might fall through, but goodwill didn't have to dot a T. Least he could point them in the right direction. Thank you, Mr. Chen. That night, Xiao Qingyu lay awake, turning Chen Cheng's words over in his mind. How was he supposed to pivot? If he made a direct change, he'd lose everything, the entire industry and all his accumulated clients. But Chen Cheng had made it clear what happened if he tried to hold on. He'd be heading straight into a brick wall. What am I supposed to do? Someone else couldn't sleep either. Xiao Zong, President Tan's reproach haunted him. Why did Chen Cheng have to show up and throw the entire industry into chaos? The fragile balance of Yuju had been shattered because of this guy. He said, "Get little gang on the phone. Tell him to send Chen Cheng a great gift tomorrow." When the message reached little gang, he was just finishing a drink. Hearing Xiao Zong wanted him, he immediately hailed a cab to Xiao Zong's place. "Bro, just tell me what you need." The moment he walked in, little gang saw the heavy dark circles under Xiao Zong's eyes. He wondered what was wrong with his big brother. "Tell you? All you do is reek of booze every day. What else can I tell you?" Xiao Zong frowned and told him to sit down. The smell of alcohol was making his head spin. "Come on, man. I was already off the clock. Just tell me what you need." Wang Chong shrugged. If it weren't for the cash his brother threw his way, he wouldn't have left his drinking buddies for this. Every time he cleaned up one of Wang Feng's messes, he walked away with a thick stack of bills. "Here's 100,000. I need you to deliver a special gift." Wang Feng slid a packet of powder across the table. The plan was simple. Slip it into old Jiang's food stall. Whether those bastards got sick or not all depended on how smoothly this went. That's it. Wang Chong didn't see a problem. Slipping someone something was easy, just don't kill anyone. What he didn't know was that this wasn't some slow-release drug. It was arsenic trioxide rat poison. Done. Next time you want to deal with small fry like them, just say the word. I won't even need a stunt like this. Wang Chong bragged that he could handle them directly. Take them out. No games. You really are an idiot. All you think about is fists and blood. You think violence solves everything? Wang Feng looked at his little brother with genuine disappointment. The guy had Chong in his name, meaning strength, but he was all muscle and zero-brained. He couldn't figure out where things had gone wrong before, and he clearly didn't want to think about it now. The next morning, Wang Chong slipped into old Jiang's stall. The place was practically deserted. Feng Yang was holding his usual morning brief and work assignments, so everyone was huddled around. This was too easy. That 100 grand was as good as in his pocket. Wang Chong couldn't stop grinning. He had zero patience. That's everything. Get moving. Nai Xiaolong. Bring the ingredients in. Feng Yang noted that the drink was still missing something. He needed to inspect it carefully. When the ingredients came through, Nai Xiaolong didn't catch anything off. But Feng Yang spotted white powder that hadn't fully dissolved. What's this? He pointed, frowning. No clue. That's not part of our usual supplies. Nai Xiaolong was caught off guard. He sniffed carefully but didn't pick up anything suspicious. He lifted a finger to taste it. If it was bad, he'd just dump the whole batch. Don't touch it, toss it and start fresh. Feng Yang shook his head and told Nai Xiaolong to hurry. Old Jiang nodded. This was suspicious as hell outside. Wang Qiong had no idea what was unfolding. He just watched them drag the ingredients inside. Obviously they were going to drink them. Why else bring them in? Soon enough, he heard a commotion from inside, like people scrambling to get things ready. Time to bounce. With the 100,000 in his pocket, Wang Qiong headed straight for the bar. He was a big shot now, ready to spend. The taste is close, but there are still issues. Feng Yang laid out two main problems. First, the process was way too complicated. They needed a different extraction method. Second, they had to adjust the herbal bitterness. If they kept it like this, most people wouldn't accept it. Not everyone could stomach that flavor. If they didn't fix both of these, it would be a constant headache. We can handle that. But extraction isn't just grinding things into powder. Old Jiang gave a dry smile. His herbal tea's whole selling point was the process. But this isn't some artisanal gongfu tea service. With how fast-paced life is, nobody's going to stand around waiting for your tea to steep. Feng Yang suggested cold brew extraction. If they could nail the cold brew process, everything else would fall into place. Cold brewing was a completely foreign concept to them, and no one had ever tried it. Think about it. Aluminum cans deform when heated. That alone puts a hard limit on you. Feng Yang set the price at 4 yuan, just a little above regular soft drinks. That was the appeal of herbal tea, but that wasn't enough. They needed to push the culture and the design. The packaging had to grab people's eyes. They considered darker colors to match the liquid's appearance and make it more appealing. No use red with gold lettering. Feng Yang explained that this color scheme would pop. A dull yellow wouldn't catch anyone's attention and would kill sales. Then he told Nai Xiaolong to buy a bottle of Huiyuan juice. Had to be 100% pure. 5 minutes later, Nai Xiaolong was back with 2 different juice packages, setting them in front of Feng Yang. This is my design. I even need to explain how effective it is. Feng Yang smiled a little. It wasn't actually his design. Boss Wang had once overlaid their branding directly onto the existing juice packaging. That one clever move had stolen the market right back from the competition. Herbal tea is uncharted territory. There's barely any drink like this in the national market. Feng Yang said that if they could make the canned version a hit, it could spread like Coca-Cola. Later, we can use bottles too, obviously, but plastic costs more than aluminum. You get the picture. When he said that, everyone nodded. They understood exactly what he meant. Our quality is solid. To turn a profit, we have to cut costs in areas where we can actually improve. Feng Yang stressed that no matter what, they couldn't cut corners on taste. They also had to lock down the sales channels with strict control. Since this was a brand new industry, they had to follow regulations from the start: trademark registration, copyright filing. But, there are so many herbal teas out there already. What would a copyright even do? Old Jiang didn't get it. He wanted to know what a copyright was actually for. That's exactly why it matters. The market is a mess. Once we hold the copyright, anyone who copies our idea or logo is a knockoff. Feng Yang explained they could sue. Legal consequences, plain and simple. I see, then we'll do it your way, Mr. Feng. I'll get on it right now. Old Jiang left fast, but that didn't wrap anything up. These things took time. At least a week, maybe sooner. A week works. We can start printing. Feng Yang said he'd have all the packaging designs ready in 2 days, but first, they had to settle his graphic design fee. Old Jiang's mind went blank when he heard that. Seriously, this is your own business, and you're charging a design fee? Why not? I don't work for free. Feng Yang shrugged it off and told everyone to kick off the warm-up campaign. First move, street stalls. They'd push the drinks ice cold, which meant Wang Qiong had to give them a crash course. Feng Yang's top salespeople were scattered all over Guangzhou, and they hustled day one. Nobody lagged behind. Everyone got a decent meal. Only 2 or 3 people took a hit on sales numbers, but most pocketed their first commissions. Wang Qiong even bragged that Guangzhou was a sales paradise. I've never had it this easy. You know what 100% success rate feels like? Wang Qiong was pumped. He called a quick huddle to deliver the second message. Feng Yang wanted them to build buzz for the herbal tea. Old Jiang's herbal tea, you can tell Feng Yang named it, same energy as our old godfather fried chicken. Everyone laughed. They each got a can of iced herbal tea. Honestly, I'm not always into this stuff. Tastes like medicine. Wang Qiong wrinkled his nose. He wasn't wrong. The scent hit you the second you twisted off the cap. Try it. It's actually pretty sweet. True, the chill took some of the edge off the sweetness, but it went down smooth. I think this drink has potential. You ever try those store-bought herbal teas? Garbage. When Wang Qiong first got here, he dropped 10 yuan on a cup, expensive and tasted off, but this stuff, 4 yuan a can, not bad, and the flavor was worlds better. By late afternoon, these herbal teas had popped up all over Guangzhou. A bunch of out-of-town vendors started drinking them out in the open. Curiosity spread. People wanted to know what it was, but no one could find it in any supermarket. Excuse me. What's that you're drinking? You look like you're really enjoying it. A customer finally stepped up. Wang Qiong wasn't sure if he was a real buyer, but he answered patiently. Old Jiang's herbal tea. Then he tipped his head back and drained the rest. You hear that? Old Jiang's herbal tea. What herbal tea? Rumors started buzzing across Guangzhou. Some people even offered serious money for a can, but there were no distribution channels, and no matter how high they bid, they couldn't get a single bottle. Hey, man, stop drinking and sell me one. Some guy was eyeing Wang Qiong. He had way too many cans on him, and no way he'd been nursing just one all afternoon. Sorry. Can't do that. Wang Qiong shut him down flat. Why not? What's your deal? There's nothing actually in it. The guy shoved Wang Qiong, knocking him off balance, and snatched a can off the table. Without a word, he chugged it. Whoa. That's amazing. The commotion pulled a crowd watching them. People started to realize this herbal tea was something else. Seriously, this is the best herbal tea I've ever had. The guy kept rambling, but Wang Qiong had already slipped away. Damn, that kid's too bold. Next time, tell him not to be so reckless. Wang Qiong shook his head. The kid was fast. Wang Qiong had barely gotten back on his feet before the drink nearly spilled. Mission accomplished. Feng Yang glanced at him. Judging by Wang Qiong's face, it had gone off without a hitch. Yeah, totally. The crowd was massive. I barely knew how to get out of there. Wang Qiong wasn't exaggerating. With that many people around, how was he supposed to vanish unnoticed? Boss, I'm back. That was genius. When do we start the rollout? They were still working out of pop-up stores. No official shelf placement yet. Feng Yang's plan was simple. Pocket the first wave of profits yourself. That's why he'd built the hype first. Without it, there'd be nothing to compare against. They'd have lost before they even started. Habit will trap you. That's why we have to hit hard right now. Feng Yang told them to launch the next round of street vending. After the takoyaki success, they had momentum. They already knew the drilled no reason they couldn't pull this off. The salespeople all got busy. Selling drinks wasn't complicated, way easier than cooking, plus, their herbal tea didn't need a hard sell. People just walked up and bought it. For yuan, that's not bad. Most people had the same reaction compared to the 10+ yuan herbal teas. This was a steal. Of course, they hadn't tasted it yet. Only Feng Yang and his sales crew had. The whole street scene was his setup. Wow, this is incredible. Customers loved it. A cold drink like this was perfect for the heat. Give me 10 bottles. To go. A man in a suit stepped forward. He looked like management, someone who didn't belong at a street stall. 10 bottles. You sure about that? The salesperson froze. Most people bought 1 or 2. This guy wanted 10. Did I stutter? I said 10. Wrap them up. The suit looked impatient. He kept glancing around like he was worried someone would recognize him. Right away, sir. That'll be 40 yuan. They bagged the cans quickly. The salesman was thrilled. Best sale of the day. Thanks for your business. Come back anytime. But the man didn't move. He twisted open a can right there and took a long sip. His eyes went wide. This is the real deal. Where's your boss? The salesman hesitated. Feng Yang had given strict instructions. No one was to reveal anything. Sorry, sir. I'm just a vendor. I don't know the boss. The man narrowed his eyes. He could smell a lie. Don't give me that. A product this good doesn't just appear out of nowhere. I want in. In on what? The salesman played dumb, but his heart was pounding. Distribution. I'm a regional manager for a supermarket chain. This drink will sell out in days. Put me in touch with whoever's in charge. The salesman swallowed hard. This was way above his pay grade. Look, I really don't. Then find someone who does. The man handed him a business card, gold lettering on thick cream paper. It looked expensive. Tell your boss I'll be waiting, and if I don't hear back by tomorrow, I'll find him myself. He took his 10 bottles and walked away. The salesman stared at the card. Regional manager, Guangdong Division. One of the biggest retail chains in the province. He ran to find Wang Chong. Boss Wang, we've got a problem. Some big shot just showed up asking about distribution. Wang Chong skimmed the card, then he grinned. That's not a problem. That's the whole point. He pulled out his phone and dialed Feng Yang. Boss. It worked. They're already sniffing around. Some supermarket chain wants a meeting. On the other end, Feng Yang leaned back in his chair. Exactly as planned. Create scarcity. Let the demand build, then make them come begging. Stall him. 2 days. By then, every big retailer in Guangzhou will be calling. Wang Chong laughed. You're cold, you know that. Business isn't a charity. Feng Yang ended the call and stared out the window. The street market was the first domino. Once the retailers started fighting over shelf space, the price would skyrocket. Supply and demand. Simple. But simple didn't mean easy. They still had competitors watching. Copycats would pop up the second the herbal tea went mainstream. They needed to move fast and lock in exclusive deals before anyone else caught on. He pulled up his contacts and started making calls. The real work was just beginning. Every drink at the stand sold out in under 10 minutes. Not just the herbal tea. Wang Ping'an had stocked every corner of the stall with fruit juices and anything ice cold that turned a profit. Those were backup products, though whether people bought them or not was their call. We're closing up, same time tomorrow, come back then. Every vendor used the exact same line. The plan was to run the stall for a full week. After that, they'd start supplying nearby supermarkets and wholesale stores. If they wanted more people to accept this drink, it had to go mainstream. A week's results would speak for themselves. All of Yuju knows about their herbal tea business now. This has Wang Ping'an's fingerprints all over it. Feng Yang didn't need to guess what was happening. He didn't waste time considering other explanations. No one else had the ability to pull this off but Wang Ping'an, and Wang Ping'an's existence was exactly why their own operations had crumbled. The Wang Group's herbal tea wasn't selling anymore. Their price advantage was gone, and once people realized Old Jiang was actually Old Jiang, the buzz around the tea exploded all over again. We've got the reputation now. When do we move into outside markets? Old Jiang was getting antsy. He wanted to strike while the iron was hot. Not so fast. We don't have enough distribution channels yet. I heard an inspection team is arriving the day after tomorrow. We can try to get them on board. Wang Ping'an had that tip from Li Changyu. Li Changyu wasn't handling the reception, though Wang Changsheng was, which meant the group might already have a fixed impression before they even arrived. By then, it would be too late. If Wang Changsheng pulled every string, blocked every piece of information, and pushed his own herbal tea to the front, they could still copy that model. They'd just target markets outside Yuju. So Wang Ping'an needed to seize this opportunity. Let Wang Changsheng make the dress. Wang Ping'an would be the one wearing it. But how sure are you? You know that bastard Wang has prepared a ton. Old Jiang's frustration leaked into his voice. These inspection teams weren't people you could just invite with money. They didn't lack cash. They had serious influence. They only accepted Wang Changsheng's offer because they saw potential in Yuju. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a chance at all. Don't talk like that. Let's think positive. Wang Ping'an gave a faint smile. No matter how much Wang Changsheng bribed or threatened those people, in the end, they were all here to make money. Besides, everything in Yuju was crystal clear. All he had to do was let them see the herbal tea. Over the next few days, Wang Ping'an instructed his runners to monitor every entry and exit point. Any vehicle from outside Yuju, log it. They were likely coming by bus or minibus. Nothing too executive class. A pretty uncomfortable ride, actually. And don't overlook vans. If the plates are out of town, flag them. Wang Ping'an wanted to put the product in their faces the second they arrived. With so many consumers already promoting for them, building a reputation in those people's minds wouldn't be hard. The path was wide open. Wang Ping'an was ready and waiting on the other side. Wang Changsheng drilled the same points into Feng Yang. Pay special attention to Old Jiang's side. What if Wang Ping'an gets some insane idea and does something reckless? His fear of Wang Ping'an ran deeper than any other business rivals. That guy was impossible to bribe or threaten. Nothing had ever worked. I understand. Don't worry. Feng Yang was confused too. His own brother had slipped in the poison, so why hadn't there been any accident? He'd gone through a lot of connections to check. No one had heard about anyone from Wang Ping'an's side winding up in a hospital. Did you not handle it cleanly? In the back lounge of a bar, Feng Yang found his brother. The guy was already wasted, barely holding himself together. What are you implying, bro? You think I took the money and didn't do the job? When have I ever pulled something like that, Mingdong? Drunk as he was, the guy puffed up with false bravado, his words dripping with a disrespect that made Feng Yang's jaw tighten. Bro, listen. I can try again. I'll take out Wang Ping'an myself. Of course, that'll cost extra. The moment those words left his mouth, Feng Yang's temper snapped. He hurled the contents of his glass straight into his brother's face. You animal, you ruined everything. Without giving him another cent, Feng Yang left and headed directly for Wang Ping'an. He needed to have a real conversation about the pros and cons of this mess. They met at a coffee shop in Yuju. Each ordered a drink. What's this about? I didn't think we were that well acquainted. Wang Ping'an smirked. He knew exactly who Feng Yang was. Wang Ping'an, Let's cut the nonsense. I know everything about you, you know everything about me, you have to know why I'm here. Feng Yang didn't have time to waste. He downed his coffee in one swallow. Wang Ping'an, by contrast, stirred his slowly with a spoon, his eyes full of mockery and contempt. You're too impatient, impatience gets you nowhere. As Wang Ping'an spoke, the full force of his presence surged outward, hitting Feng Yang like a wave. For a split second, Feng Yang froze. He'd never encountered anyone so unnervingly calm, a player so ruthless. Wang Ping'an moved like he'd been born a king of business, like nothing in his world was impossible. You're just comforting yourself with that line. I'm telling you, the day after tomorrow is your death sentence. And the whole Jiang family will be buried right alongside you. With that, Feng Yang signaled for the check and walked out without looking back. His warning had been delivered. It was more of a threat than a warning, really. There was no way Wang Ping'an could know the specifics. Their plan was watertight. Except they'd forgotten the most critical link. Li Changyu already belonged to Wang Ping'an. I checked the plates and the vehicle. Out of town minibus. 13 passengers, all top-level bosses. Li Changyu added that they were arriving independently, so someone would meet them inside the city. Perfect, that makes it even easier for us to move. Wang Ping'an couldn't hold back a laugh. With this setup and timing, it was like fate itself was clearing his path. Losing would be nearly impossible. Don't get too comfortable, Feng Yang does have some skill. If it had been anyone else, Wang Ping'an might have been concerned. But coming from Feng Yang, he didn't give it a second thought. A man could be ruthless, but if that ruthlessness bled into competition, he'd already lost. Wang Ping'an believed competition was supposed to be healthy. Let it slip, and the whole business world suffered. So when things got hard, he gritted his teeth and pushed through. But right now, he didn't have to. He could just sit back and watch the whole field. This plan is too risky. We should drive out of the city to meet them. Young Master Wu was certain Wang Ping'an would attack somewhere along the route. He needed the opening. He'd already mapped out every countermove Wang Ping'an could make, including the very real chance he'd try to win those bosses over. You're wrong, young Master Wu, those bosses are my old friends. I invited them personally. Everything's arranged. Huang Baichuan didn't want to inconvenience them. Their status was too high. Even throwing money at the problem might not be enough. Fine. Young Master Wu had no choice but to leave. He wanted to find his younger brother, but there was no sign of him. Wu Dao wasn't at the bar. He was still fuming, furious that his brother had thrown a glass of liquor in his face for no reason. Everyone looks down on me. Fine, today I'm doing something big. He already knew the plan. He stayed on top of his brother's messages, and he knew a minivan packed with VIPs was about to arrive. This was his chance. $1,000 ahead, come with me and make some noise. Wu Dao rounded up his drinking buddies. The second they heard an easy grand, they didn't think twice. Hijack a vehicle, no problem, they were street kids. It's been a while and they still haven't made a move. Can they really be that confident? Old Jiang asked for what felt like the 12th time. Relax. If they're not moving, doesn't that just open the door for us? Wang Ping'an was getting frustrated. Why was that a bad thing? No one could cover every angle perfectly, something always slipped through, and these were high-level bosses. Unless someone had a death wish, nothing out of the ordinary would happen. That was exactly why Wang Ping'an had decided to bait them with the products. One stall catching fire wasn't enough, but a dozen stalls all blowing up at once, that would grab their attention. With the foot traffic, he could box them in during peak hours. Without breaking a sweat, the next day, during the lunch rush, the minivan crept into the city's central hub. That's when Wu Dao and his crew swarmed in. This is a hijacking, one of them yelled, and every window and door slammed shut immediately. Boss, something's wrong, another group's here. Wang Chong relayed the message fast. None of their own salespeople had moved yet. What's going on? Stay sharp. Wang Ping'an was equally confused. Had young Master Wu cooked up some new scheme? The minivan's windshield shattered, the driver knew it was real, the men were swinging weapons, no mistaking their intent. What the hell do you think you're doing? One of the bosses shouted from inside. They'd come here for business, no bodyguards. Sorry, fellas, this is a hijacking. Everybody out. Wu Dao screamed, rage twisting his face. His crew started beating up the vehicle. The bosses had no choice but to comply. News hit Huang Group headquarters fast. Huang Baichuan was in his office preparing tea when the report came. His legs nearly gave out. Who? His first thought was Wang Ping'an. He called for his secretary. We already checked. It wasn't Wang Ping'an. It was Wu Dao. The secretary's eyes flicked toward young Master Wu. Wu Dao was his brother. Young Master Wu had just heard the news. He looked shell-shocked. What? You'd better have a damn good explanation for this. Moments later, a live camera feed lit up the terminal. Wu Dao stood in the middle of the road, weapon raised, thugs flanking him. The bosses were on their knees. Listen up, my brothers, the young master of the Huang Group, take a good look at me. Wu Dao shouted his own name, then cracked each boss once with his baton. After that, he just walked off. A crowd had gathered, but nobody dared to step in. Get them out of there. Wang Ping'an moved fast. He ordered his salespeople to clear out immediately and rushed the bosses to the hospital. Half an hour later, Huang Baichuan arrived at the hospital with his men. Wang Chong was already there. President Huang, long time no see, funny running into you here. Wang Chong's tone dripped with mockery. This has nothing to do with you, get lost. Huang Baichuan was boiling, praying none of those bosses were seriously hurt. The first boss came out, his head wrapped in bandages. He locked eyes with Huang Baichuan. You'd better have an explanation. What the hell just happened? Wu Dao had screamed his brother's name, and the bosses had done their homework before coming. This is a misunderstanding. Let me explain. Huang Baichuan's words died as Wang Chong directed his salespeople to escort the bosses away. The bosses went willingly, heading straight for the north side of the city. The injuries weren't serious, just swelling and bruises. Nothing a few bandages couldn't handle. I'm sorry you all had to go through that. This is on me. Wang Ping'an poured each of them a cup of tea, then had his staff bring over cold herbal drinks to bring down the swelling. You're too kind, Boss Wang. We've heard your name before, never thought we'd meet like this. The boss laughed, exchanging the necessary pleasantries. Is that the herbal tea everyone's drinking? Can I try some? One of the bosses looked genuinely impressed. They'd seen the massive lines of people buying those drinks on the street. It might be the hottest product in the entire city. Absolutely, this tea was prepared especially for you. Wang Ping'an smiled. But I'd recommend you try what's in front of you first. The bosses had tried herbal tea many times before. They weren't strangers to Guangzhou. They knew old Jiang and Wang Changsheng were rivals, but they had to admit the flavor was seriously good. Honestly, your tea-making process blows the Wang groups out of the water. That was the most objective review. Still, a few wanted to compare it to the canned version, iced versus room temperature. There had to be a difference. Pop, the classic sound of a can opening. Everyone laughed. Let me take a sip first, see what it tastes like. A chubby boss grinned, tilted his head back, and drank. The sweet flavor was way better than the previous batch, and the ice-cold temperature only made it better. Don't tell me these two are the same product. Old Jiang couldn't help but laugh. He nodded. The guy was exactly right. Both were the same product, made with the exact same process. Damn, Are you selling at a loss? This herbal tea used to cost over $10. What about the canned version? That's what the bosses really wanted to know. They were curious what price would make the canned tea profitable. $4 a can, cheap enough to drink every day, Wang Ping'an said with a light smile. $4 for herbal tea wasn't exactly cheap. Milk only cost $2 a bottle, but with this reputation, he could even change the slogan to no price increase in 20 years. A little pricey, but worth it for the craftsmanship. The bosses nodded in agreement. They all thought Wang Ping'an's approach was smart. That's all small stuff, but Mr. Wang, your main business isn't herbal tea, is it? They were genuinely interested in him. Wang Ping'an was a near mythical figure in the business world. No, it's not, Wang Ping'an said with a smile. If you don't mind me asking, which city are you all from? He needed to know where to start his next move. Once he pinpointed their city, he could use it as a lever for his strategy. That was how business relationships worked. That was the network. Only when two circles merged could he fully integrate his network. It's all about connections. We pool resources to make money. Going solo is way too exhausting. Wang Ping'an spoke casually, but he meant every word. He was hoping they'd catch his drift. Business integration was the only way to dominate the market. Otherwise, everything would be a mess. But there was one advantage: plenty of people in Guangzhou played the stock market. The largest exchange in the south was only 100 miles away. He decided he'd check it out tomorrow. With Mr. Wang saying that, I feel a lot better. Following you means we all get a piece of the pie. These bosses all had their own brick-and-mortar businesses. They'd come here for the herbal tea, and after the mess with Wang Changsheng, they'd signed a 10-year contract with old Jiang. Honestly, this contract, partly for Mr. Wang's sake, partly for old Jiang's skills, the price is fair. They'd agreed to a 10-year exclusive supply deal below market rate. No problem. We'll sign. Old Jiang jumped at the chance, then he shot a quick glance at Wang Ping'an. Seeing no reaction, he breathed a sigh of relief. That evening, Wang Ping'an arranged accommodations and meals at a restaurant owned by an old acquaintance. He made sure they were well taken care of and told Wang Feng to show them a good time. Keep your sales teams on their current model. Day after tomorrow, we expand to the next city. Wang Ping'an didn't drink much tonight. He claimed he couldn't hold his liquor. Only old Jiang understood what that meant. Wang Ping'an was about to make a new move. Little brother Ping'an, you're heading to the neighboring city? That's right, the city I'm headed to is one I've always wanted to visit. It has the largest exchange in the south. Wang Ping'an was frank. He said stocks were the most important indicator of the economy. Only by understanding the ins and outs could he decide how his company should survive. Whether he'd succeed was another matter, but he had to push it to the limit. If he failed, it would be because he wasn't good enough, not because of anyone else. I'm surprised you think that way. The first impression I got from you was a wild, unruly wanderer. Old Jiang called Li Changyu to assist Wang Ping'an and arranged a car for the trip. Everything had to look proper. There weren't any luxury cars around here, but big BMWs were plentiful. Listen, tonight you'll get your brother Ping'an the car, then have Wang Fengbo contact him. Old Jiang explained that Wang Fengbo was his only business contact in that city. Not a huge help, but better than nobody. Thanks. Wang Ping'an was content. A person's value wasn't about how powerful they were, but whether they understood how things worked. Connections were everything. That was all he needed to say. Pack me a case of herbal tea. I'll drink it on the road. Some were happy, some were worried. Over at the Wang Group, chaos was boiling over. Still running your mouth? What the hell were you thinking? Feng Yang glared at his younger brother, furious but unable to take drastic measures. This was his own flesh and blood. If he hurt him, he'd only hurt himself. Brother, I just wanted to help, you never tell me anything. Feng Mingdong was frustrated. His real intention was to clean up the mess for his brother, but he'd aimed wrong. Now Mr. Wang wants me to hand you over. It'll probably be a harsh interrogation, just watch what you say. Feng Yang knew he couldn't stall any longer. He took his brother straight to the company, but halfway there, he slammed on the brakes. What's wrong, brother? Feng Mingdong asked, confused. Then he saw tears streaming down his brother's face. I'm not handing you over. We'll go to another city and start fresh. I'm done with this company. He hit the gas, turned the car around, and sped onto the highway going the opposite direction. Wang Changsheng found out 2 hours later that he'd been trying to reach Feng Yang, but the calls kept going straight to voicemail. It infuriated him. How dare he not answer my calls? Tell him if he wants to live, he'd better get back here right now, Wang Changsheng snarled. When Feng Yang finally called, it was 3 in the morning. I'm sorry, but I can't hand over my brother. You'll have to deal with your own mess. Xiaozong, Tan Kaixing hurled his phone to the ground. If he could have dragged Xiaozong out right then and beaten him senseless, he would have. That animal was a walking disaster. To be fair, it's not entirely Xiaozong's fault. He's innocent in all this. It's his brother. The secretary kept his voice low, cautious. Tan was already in a rage, and no point in making it worse. Tan knew that. He just couldn't bring himself to say it out loud. Did that erase his own responsibility? No, the truth was, they had run into a different kind of enemy entirely, Chen Cheng. Chen Cheng found Ming at a factory on the outskirts of the city. Ming dealt in tea. His leaves weren't high-grade enough for the luxury market, but he moved decent volume. A solid start for a young entrepreneur. Brother Chen, Uncle Jiang contacted me. Having you here puts my mind at ease. Ming spoke easily as they drove. He told Chen Cheng about more than just tea. He talked about the very character of Mingju people. People here aren't like Yuju, they love to eat. They love to spend. He glanced over at Chen Cheng. Don't let the street clothes fool you. Someone walking around looking basic, maybe a little rough around the edges, could own dozens of shops. Happens all the time. Chen Cheng had heard that before. All over the South, landlords dressed like broke farmers. They held buildings that had exploded in value during the urban boom. The ones who couldn't buy just rented and held tight to their businesses. Lose that, and you lose everything. Looks like you already understand Mingju pretty well, Brother Chen. Most outsiders don't get it, Ming smiled. Most outsiders wrote this place off. It wasn't as developed as Magic City in every metric, but Mingju had real, embedded wealth. It wasn't the same town from 20 years ago. It's going to grow even faster now. That's why I want to look at the securities market. Chen Cheng laid out his purpose, but it was already night. Nothing would be open until morning. Late night eating was woven into Mingju life. Breakfast meant dim sum, afternoons meant sweets. Nights meant barbecue and fresh seafood. Don't judge the food by the neighborhood. We've got everything you'd expect. And some things you wouldn't. With the coast nearby, seafood was cheap. The desserts and tea snacks actually cost more. People said Mingju folks knew how to enjoy life, and they were right. A city doesn't grow this fast on ambition alone. Mingju divides into 5 parts. First is the North Ecological Park, strictly protected. 0 industrial pollution. Ming warned him. 1 wrong move there. 1 slip up, and you'd get slapped with a massive fine. Second part is the West. It borders Yuju Economic Border Zone, not the prettiest, but the pace is fast. Transportation hub. Chen Cheng nodded. That was clear enough. Third is the middle. The main urban district. Fastest growing. The real commercial and economic center. The central district was packed with plazas and office towers, More than you'd see in plenty of first-tier cities. Southerners and Yuju transplants lived there. That's where the work happened. That's where life happened. Fourth is the South, old Mingju full of locals, and you know how that goes. The phrase came with a trace of bitterness. Ming had clearly taken his lumps when he first arrived. Chen Cheng understood. Locals rarely welcomed outsiders disrupting their rhythm. The last part is the most important. The Southeast. Chen Cheng already knew it. Across from the islands, not just a port. The mainland's real hub, imports, exports, and a serious modern industrial base. You could find cutting-edge tech there, and the infrastructure ran circles around the rest of the city. That's Mingju. That's what I know, should cover most of it. Ming was a walking encyclopedia. By the time he finished, Chen Cheng had a clear view of Mingzhou's business landscape. Import-driven. Thin on tertiary services, dependent on neighboring cities for support. No native heavy industry, but it still matched up against anywhere else. That's the charm of Mingju. I hope I did it justice. After dropping Chen Cheng at his hotel, Ming and Xiaoqiang lit cigarettes up on the rooftop. So what do you make of Brother Chen? Xiaoqiang was always curious about other people's impressions, strong. A pioneer. His business instincts are on par with any listed company CEO. Ming didn't hand out praise easily. But Chen Cheng had done more than impress him with strategy. He'd offered concrete suggestions for the tea factory, nothing flashy. Just sharp observations about gaps Ming had completely overlooked. Ming used to think he was meticulous. Meeting Chen Cheng made him feel like an amateur. The guy is terrifying. Put 100 of me together, and we still wouldn't match him. And yet, 3 days after landing in Yuju, he tore apart their entire business network and got Uncle Jiang to partner with every major player in the city. Ming's jaw dropped. He had not seen that coming. Neither did I. But Brother Chen's appeal doesn't stop there. You ever heard of the River Dragon? Xiaoqiang launched into the story from that day, adding a little color here and there. Damn. Ming said it under his breath. A guy that mild-mannered, that ruthless. He felt his entire understanding shift sideways. The River Dragon was the biggest local snake around, and Chen Cheng, a businessman, had forced him into submission without even lifting a finger. That wasn't just skill. That was something else entirely. I respect him now. Ming shook his head. He's a real force. Anyone else saying that wouldn't have pissed him off, but this guy, pure contempt, that was the problem. Chen Cheng had just walked into the securities firm on Ming's introduction. The whole setup here was nothing like the financial scene back in the capital. Everything's top shelf. I didn't think your daily volume would hit numbers this high. Every securities market tracked real-time volume on their terminals. This is nothing. You should see it on a Sunday night, peak hours. Ming smiled and led him inside. He'd already set up a meeting with the man in charge. The guy waiting for them was the deputy general manager Li Ping, with a rigid middle part in his hair. Good afternoon, Manager Li. Chen Cheng greeted him with a smile. The response was I see. Li Ping didn't even pretend to care. I'll be direct. Ming told me why you're here. Mingju Securities doesn't need outside help. Period. Chen Cheng froze. He hadn't even gotten a word in before the door slammed shut. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Manager Li. I'm not here to interfere. I came to discuss a potential partnership. He laid it out, dead serious, hoping Li Ping would spare him 5 minutes. How many times do I have to say this? Mingju Securities needs no outside help. Li Ping shoved his chair back and stood. He jabbed a finger at Ming. Don't waste my time with irrelevant people again. No one expected that kind of ice. Even Ming hadn't seen it coming. This was blatant, humiliating. Had he messed up the intro, when he'd first pitched the meeting, Li Ping had seemed genuinely happy. Something's off here, but for now, let's go. A Ming nudged him toward the door. He hadn't planned on this either. It came out of nowhere, and he felt guilty as hell. You want to make it up to me? I've got a job for you. Go back inside and find out who Li Ping's talking to. Chen Cheng was dead certain someone was pulling strings behind the scenes, and that someone was probably aiming straight at him. A Ming hesitated. He wasn't sure what Chen Cheng was getting at, but he decided to follow through. His only real worry was getting tossed out by security. Relax. Li Ping still needs you around. He'll let you back in. Chen Cheng waved him off, signaling him to go. He turned and walked away himself. Watching Chen Cheng leave, Li Ping gave a satisfied nod. It's handled. Happy? The man across from him was Miao Zong. It is. Looks like I read you right. I'll help you lock down the full securities business. Your position won't be a question anymore. Miao Zong's tone was pure confidence. Right then, a Ming stepped back in, face full of apology. I'm really sorry, Brother Li. I had no idea his involvement would be such a headache. Li Ping cut him off with a smile and patted the seat next to him. He motioned for a Ming to sit. I'm not upset with you. You're my brother. It's that friend of yours. Is no good. Li Ping painted Chen Cheng as a walking disaster. He warned a Ming not to get played. He glanced toward the man across the table with a small nod. This man had seen the whole thing. His reputation in Yuzhou was solid. Mr. Miao Zong. CEO of the Tan Group, my partner now. Nice to meet you, Mr. Miao. A Ming greeted him smoothly. He knew how to work a room. Just call me Zong. It's been a long time since anyone bothered with my full surname. Miao Zong smiled back. He kept his questions light. Just how a Ming knew Chen Cheng, the details spilled easily. They'd met barely half a day ago. Chen Cheng had flashed a lot of cash, played the big spender, so a Ming agreed to help open a door. Now he regretted every second of it. He wanted nothing else to do with Chen Cheng. Here, point 10,000. A welcome gift. I heard you're in tea. Miao Zong smiled and pressed a check into a Ming's hand. Yeah, tea, mostly the blend's Southerners' favor. When a Ming talked tea, he knew his business. It was his world. After years in Mingju, his accent had completely shifted. Nobody could tell he was born and raised in Yuzhou. Good. I can point you in a few directions. Guarantee your business hits a new level. A Ming couldn't hold back a grin. He lifted his teacup in Miao Zong's direction. Alright, a Ming. Mr. Miao and I still have things to discuss. You can head out. Li Ping was dismissing him. If a Ming hadn't still been useful, he wouldn't have given him this much time. Once a Ming left, Li Ping frowned at Miao Zong. Why blow 10 grand on that? 10,000 to sever his ties with Chen Cheng for good. You don't think that's worth it? Miao Zong had nerve. He didn't lack for anything in that department, but he'd met his match in Chen Cheng. Under that shadow, he could never hold his head high. When a Ming finally relayed everything to Chen Cheng, the man nodded slowly. If that was the case, it didn't surprise him at all. Miao Zong had clearly been pushed past the point of reason. Now he was gunning to undermine him. But Brother Chen, we can't just play defense. That guy's no lightweight. We need to strike first. A Ming said he could tell Miao Zong wasn't some pushover. Something about the man felt wrong. Hard to put into words, I know, but compared to me, he's still green. Chen Cheng wasn't about to fold just because he'd been shut out. The rejection only hardened his resolve that he was going to take over the entire market. There was no stepping back now. Get ready. We're doing reckon. By get ready, Chen Cheng meant change. Their suits were way too formal. Rolling into the local market dressed like that wasn't ideal. That look didn't fit everywhere. A lot of people hated it. In Mingju, board shorts and flip-flops were the real uniform. Right now we look like a couple of landlords. I've never worn clothes like this before. A Ming laughed. He felt ridiculous. That's your problem. You still haven't figured out how to live here. What made Mingju special wasn't anything fancy. It was the street food, pastries of every kind, And even more milk tea shops than you could count. It feels different here, like I've been missing out on something. Chen Cheng was talking about his life before his rebirth. Back then, nothing this pure existed. The milk tea in his old timeline was all artificial flavors and additives. None of that real creamy taste, just heavy syrups and chemicals that wrecked your health and left your body off balance. Milk tea, pastries, steamed buns, all good, but the real specialty is the wild game. Ming explained what wild game really meant. Bugs fried after a good sanitizing, and they tasted damn good. No thanks. I'll pass. I'm a regular guy. Chen Cheng laughed, awkward. He wasn't about to touch those things. Ming and Xiao Qiong were welcome to them, and they didn't hold back. The whole platter of fried bugs vanished in a storm of crunching. So what else is Mingju known for? Any other spots? At that, both of them laughed out loud. Mingzhou's biggest draw isn't stocks or street food. It's the tertiary industry. Ming clarified that here, the tertiary industry wasn't that broad economics definition. IT was a full system built on service, specifically, one thing. Foot massage. Foot massage? Chen Cheng glanced down at his own feet. He'd always hated anyone touching them. He never set foot in a massage parlor, and even in the hospital he'd flinch away from a doctor. Just try it once, who knows? You might actually like it. Under heavy pressure from Ming and Xiao Qiong, Chen Cheng reluctantly let them drag him there. When they arrived, he saw just how booming this tertiary industry really was. A long line of people waited for foot massages. Hey boss, we're here, set us up. No wait. Ming grinned and pulled out a card. VIP. Line skipping privileges. You only got one if you'd spent over 10 grand, and he'd dropped that on his very first visit. You know, it's not cheap here. They charge per toe point $10 a toe. Ming told the attendant to book a private room for 3. He was ready to relax. Then Chen Cheng experienced a massage he'd never forget. Point 1 that nearly had him jumping clean off the table. Well, damn, guess brother Chen isn't totally invincible after all. Xiao Qiong sounded genuinely surprised. He'd finally found something that scared Chen Cheng. I'm not a saint. I'm not indestructible. Chen Cheng shot back, annoyed. He just prayed the torture would end soon, but near the end, the feeling shifted. He started to realize a foot massage could actually be pleasant, detoxifying, relaxing. Stimulating the acupoints gives you real feedback about your body's condition. The old master working on Chen Cheng's feet knew his craft. He explained every step in detail and slowly broke down every last one of Chen Cheng's defenses. Honestly, your skills are insane, master. Chen Cheng sucked in a sharp breath, barely surviving the sensation. Relax. How can I work if you won't relax? The old man tapped his calf in disapproval, a clear signal to cooperate. 2 hours, Chen Cheng had entered a whole new level of existence. Brother Chen, you feel like you never want to leave. That was me at first, now I'm used to it. Ming said it was completely normal, some people just didn't get it, but after years here, he'd fully absorbed the local culture. I'm thinking of opening a massage place. A big chain, foot care focus. Chen Cheng's mind sparked. In the future, places like this would be everywhere, but cheap and low quality because not just anyone was qualified. Training was one piece, hard work was another. Chen Cheng could solve that problem completely. He'd keep hiring people and let them grow. 3 years, 5, 10, those employees would become his biggest asset. No one would turn down a team like that, so prices would naturally stay high. Hey Ming, how much was that? Chen Cheng asked casually, figuring a few hundred at most. He hadn't expected the bill for 3 people over 2 hours to land at 3,000. That expensive. Is this high-end or mid-range? He was confused. High-end he could understand, but if this was standard, people around here were way too extravagant. Standard, and we got the cheapest package. Entry fee starts at $1,000. Ming was being straight. Even so, a lot of people didn't bother with memberships. Not everyone came regularly. A one-time spend was one thing, dropping that kind of cash all the time was something else. I really underestimated this place. If not for the pricing, I'd invest for sure. Chen Cheng knew a few $100,000 wouldn't mean much to the owner, but a few million was too much. A stable brand like this wasn't something you just handed over for someone else to profit from, so the only play was to poach, steal their staff, offer better pay and benefits. Chen Cheng figured that was the move. He believed nothing was impossible, as long as he was willing to do it. When you get a chance, feel out their people. If they're interested, we'll open one. He said he'd double their salary without blinking. He wanted to build a whole brand, not just in Mingju, across the entire country. That was the only way any of this would have purpose, otherwise, it was all pointless. I hear you, Brother Chen. You're gonna take over the whole damn industry. Ming threw that out of nowhere. Originally, he'd pegged Chen Cheng as just a businessman hustling herbal tea, but the moment he spotted an opening, he pounced. His execution and ability were unmatched, his instincts were knife-sharp. And when it came to investing, he didn't overthink. If he had the funds, he went in. Risk? No need to worry, there was always room to try again. Besides, Brother Chen's never missed yet. Chen Cheng might be an industry pioneer, but he still had to respect the competition's playbook. Success like theirs didn't happen by accident. The technicians were only part of it. Other, more critical factors were in motion. You think their system's different? Ming looked confused. He laughed. Come on, a massage shop doesn't have much of a system. You pay, you get a massage. Wrong. If it were that simple, why are people lining up? Why did you buy a membership yourself? There was a lot more going on beneath the surface, but Ming had never really dug into it. He nodded with a grin. Chen, tell me. What's the real difference? The shop isn't big, and they don't have many technicians, but did you notice the setup outside? Chen Cheng pointed out that every waiting customer had a cup of hot tea, and they even offered free snacks. That was service. Only by refining the details could you hold on to people, so those customers would rather wait than leave, and the staff kept up a steady chatter with them. Before long, nobody cared about the wait. They were just there for a massage. The minutes stopped mattering. I get it now. That's the service industry. Ming hadn't considered that. Without Chen Cheng's breakdown, he might never have seen it. He'd only gotten the membership because the wait was too long. Honestly, it stung a little. 10,000 yuan wasn't pocket change. If it had been 1,000, he wouldn't have blinked. That's the threshold and the privilege. Whether it's 1,000 or 10,000, once the money's in their hands, it makes them more money. Chen Cheng explained it was essentially upfront financing. They held all the customers' cash and offered no refunds. On one hand, nobody thinks to ask for a refund. On the other, since they're already here to spend, how they spend is up to the shop. Chen Cheng laughed and told Ming that with 10 sessions max, going 3 or 4 times a month, that 10 grand would be gone in 2 months. Not everyone could afford that lifestyle. Even Chen Cheng couldn't be that extravagant. True, whatever exists has its reasons. They've built this because they know exactly what they're doing. It's no accident. Chen Cheng smiled and said the only way to truly solve the problem was to dive deep. He needed to map out the entire massage system first, then poach the talent. But there's one last piece. The most important part, how do you get them to switch? Chen Cheng had studied those technicians' skills. You couldn't develop that kind of touch without more than a decade of practice. People like that cared about money, but they also valued stability and reputation. The shop had been around a long time. Other places wouldn't necessarily pull the same clientele. After all, few people remembered the name of the technician who worked on them, they just remembered a shop they liked. We don't just need to build our store's reputation, we need to build the reputation of the foot care artisans themselves. Chen Cheng said he was like a packaging company, an agent. Everything he did was for the company's future and for his employees. If he could make their names famous, bigger than his own brand, then he'd have truly succeeded. That would be a golden name. It didn't matter if everyone bought in right away. What mattered was that those people could create a ripple effect, even draw in all the foot traffic. Chen, I'm starting to see you in a whole new light. How are you this good? Ming couldn't find words for his admiration. He felt Chen Cheng didn't belong in this city. He needed to go abroad to find real competition. Because the future would be shaped under Chen Cheng's business impact, that alone made it hard for anyone else to survive. Honestly, I think my approach is right, but you still have to leave room for others. Chen Cheng said competition was the only way to survive. If one person monopolized everything, they'd end up with nothing, lose competition, lose drive, and on top of that, you'd anger everyone around you. There's that angle too. Then what do we do about the securities firm? When that came up, Chen Cheng felt a bit helpless. Li Ping at the securities firm wasn't on his side. That meant losing one arm. There was another avenue, but he wasn't sure he could make contact. If he could, he was confident he could win that person over. None of this was hard for him. He had the means and the opportunity. He knew exactly how to play IT. IT was just a small securities company. How much trouble could it really be? Find out who owns that securities firm. Set up a meeting. Got it. Ming and Xiao Qiong moved immediately. Even if their presence alone wouldn't sway anyone, at least it would get them through the door, and for that, they owed Li Ping a lot. Ming told Li Ping he wanted to send over some tea. Fresh tea. Li Ping was thrilled. The man never moved without an incentive, and he knew exactly what those fresh teas were worth. It was like free money. How could he refuse? Brother Li, I was hoping to meet the boss. I've been here a while and still haven't seen him. Ming gave an awkward smile. He knew what to say next. If it's not possible, that's fine. I don't want to put you in a tough spot. Seeing Ming's expression, Li Ping curled his lip and clapped a hand on his shoulder. Of course it's possible. You think I'm that kind of guy? Have I ever treated you badly since you've been with me? Li Ping was feeling pretty full of himself. If he said no now, how could he ever hold his head up later? So not only would he help Ming get an introduction, he'd make it happen smoothly. Thanks, Brother Li, thank you. Ming beamed and kept thanking him. After about 5 or 6 minutes, Li Ping gestured for Ming to come out. He said the boss had agreed to meet, but only one person could go in. Xiao Qiong couldn't join, that was expected. Xiao Qiong nodded and waited outside without a word. He wasn't going to push it. He'd just stay put. You must be Ming, thanks for the tea. The boss smiled and greeted him, then waved Li Ping away. Li Ping was baffled. Since when was he so unwelcome? Sit down. Why are you just standing there? The boss kept it casual, waving Ming over with an easy smile. Thanks, thank you. Ming's nerves were shot. His hands had no idea where to land. After all, this was his first time in a situation like this, and he was standing right in front of Mingzhou's most famous businessman. The names you long call me brother Yud. I heard you've been sending tea to the whole company. Yu Long might spend all day parked in his office, but nothing slipped past him that he just didn't bother to broadcast everything he knew. Some things were fine to mention out loud. Lay every card on the table, and you killed the fun. Yeah, Brother you, mostly the guys here were nice enough to accept it, honestly. If they hadn't, I wouldn't have even gotten through the door. Ah Ming's grin was sheepish as he replayed Chen Cheng's instructions in his head. By the way, brother you, do you have any plans later? I'd love to take you to dinner. My friend wants to meet you. Ah Ming rushed to add that it wasn't anything shady. He just didn't have another way to make the connection. To his surprise, Yu Long didn't flinch. He nodded without a second thought. After all that tea you sent me, I at least owe you a meal. With that, he stood and told his assistant to clear his schedule. Everything else could wait. Today, he was going out with Ah Ming to unwind. When they stepped out of the office, Li Ping's eyes went wide. Since when did Yu Long buddy up with Ah Ming? He moved to step forward, but the assistant grabbed his arm. Don't do anything stupid. You didn't see boss Yu smile? Yeah. Why Yu Long had actually smiled in all the years since the company launched. No one had ever seen that. It was like watching the sun rise in the west. No wonder they were stunned into silence. Where's your friend? You're the host, you take the lead. Yu Long slid into Ah Ming's car without a hint of concern, not even glancing at the vehicle's interior. He's down the block. Couldn't get into the building, so I told him to wait there. Ah Ming sounded embarrassed as he explained, don't talk like that from now on. You walk right into this company whenever you want. You're my friend, and no one's going to say a word against you. When he spotted Chen Cheng, Yu Long gave a faint smile. He wasn't particularly emotional, but he'd definitely heard the name Mr. Yu. It's an honor. Chen Cheng greeted him the moment he climbed into the car. He'd done his research. Didn't realize Mr. Chen took such a keen interest in me. So what is it? You looking to plant your flag in Mingju for fun? Yu Long was a businessman through and through, not just any businessman. His mind moved fast, so he'd already pieced together why Chen Cheng was here. Exactly, but I'm short on connections, so I had to ask this young man to help bridge the gap. Hope that doesn't bother you, Emma.yu. Chen Cheng smiled back, then told Ah Ming to drive to a rustic local spot. He couldn't have cared less about fancy dining. This wasn't about money. Anyone willing to drink Ah Ming's tea wasn't the nitpicking type. Some bosses operated that way, plain and simple. Chen Cheng could tell right off that Yu Long wasn't cut from the same cloth as Li Ping, fundamentally different men. That didn't need explaining. Once they reached the restaurant, Chen Cheng motioned for Yu Long to head in first. I hear you've been making moves over in Yuju. Every single one nearly crushed the local players. Yu Long's words landed sharp, and he meant every one of them. Chen Cheng had been there 3 days, and the whole city was already flipped on its head. That wasn't charisma. It was precision. Every move he made was aimed at growth. You're too kind. I only did what I had to. Does Mr. You have an interest in my methods? Some interest, yes, but having dinner with someone as formidable as Mr. Chen comes with its own pressure. Yu Long broke it down. Mingzhou's system wasn't like Yuezhou's. One thrived on local industry, the other on comprehensive integration. Those two differences alone meant Chen Cheng's playbook wouldn't get far here. And on top of that, Mingzhou had 0 outside enterprises. The system was airtight. Any outside capital would be next to useless. Like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. That's a fair point, but I'm confident I can convince you. Chen Cheng's confidence didn't waver. Without that kind of nerve, he wouldn't expect to take anything from Yu Long's table. Sometimes people operated that way. When something was second nature to you, you developed a strange, unshakable faith in your own vision. The largest stock exchange in Magic City belongs to me, and that's not all. There's a solid securities firm in the east as well. I'm sure those aren't unfamiliar to you, Emma.yu. When Yu Long heard that, he couldn't help the laugh. Everyone in the game knew those facts. How could he not know Chen Cheng's reach? He nodded. Of course he knew. I want to link the East and the South. Instead of sharing resources, Why not merge the markets entirely? Oh. Yu Long paused, then asked, so do you plan to absorb my market, or are you offering yours to me? A loaded question. If Chen Cheng said he meant to take Yu Long's market, that would set him off. If he offered his own on a platter, the whole point was shot. Why Yu Long's counter caught him off guard. Yeah. He'd slipped up when he said that it didn't matter. Chen Cheng wasn't only thinking about the domestic scene. I'm aiming for overseas, including the biggest financial center in Latin America. Chen Cheng said there was no sense pacing the same worn-out street. The global business elite, the financial geniuses, they were all out there. Why couldn't he follow that model? Why couldn't he build something to rival them? Money makes money. The future is a globalized era right now. Import and export trade is nothing but goods and products. His words pulled Yu Long into deeper thought. Hadn't he dreamed the same dream? But saying it was easy. Doing it was a completely different beast. Not everyone could touch that level, especially with the current climate so unstable. The merchants on Latin Avenue have been running global trade since last century. Do you have any idea how deep their pockets go? When Yu asked the question, Feng Yang stayed calm. He knew that in 3 years, Island Coast would face the biggest shock it would ever see. That shock would nearly destroy every legacy business there. Massive capital players would short the market. This was his best chance to take over. Before, he wouldn't have dared to dream of it, but now, the game had changed. Give him 3 years, and he'd own it all. I know their track records are impressive. I even know about the deals they've made with other countries, but the mainland never let them in. Feng Yang said flatly. The mainland shared resources, but it never accepted that kind of investment. Island Coast didn't actually have global control. It could sway a lot, but not run the table. You're right, but I'm not sold. Yu laughed. If this meeting was just about connecting mainland securities and finance, he could agree, but copying someone else's playbook, not happening. Cash wasn't the issue. High-risk moves were. That's why I invited you. I don't expect one dinner to seal the deal. This is a long process. So how long do you figure it'll take to convince me? Yu shot back with a grin. He was starting to think Feng Yang wasn't as impressive as the rumors claimed. He'd pegged the guy as a steady businessman. Now it sounded like wishful thinking. 3 days. I'll have you on board in 3 days. Say yes, and the rest falls into place. When Feng Yang said 3 days, Li Changyu choked on his tea. He apologized, but he wasn't the only one staring. Wang Qiong and Yu both thought it was delusional. Mr. Feng, in all my years, nobody's ever closed me in 3 days. Yu looked at him, hoping the message landed. That's because you've never met me. Name a deal I can't close. After that, the meal shifted. Business stayed off the table. Without it, Feng Yang and Yu found plenty to discuss. Both knew how to talk. Glass after glass of wine, they traded stories, ideals, pieces of their lives. I never expected you to diversify your channels like that. I'll say it, your logistics might just break through. Yu sighed. Baker has water transport nailed, but air and land shipping, dead weight. Without official support propping them up, they wouldn't have it so easy. The information age hadn't even hit its stride, and those merchants were already smug. First mover always walks away rich. How you run it after is another matter. Yu smiled faintly and downed his drink. One man can only do so much. That's why I need you. Feng Yang added that the market wasn't too early. Plenty of people were already innovating. Yeah, I've heard plenty are diving into networking, sprouting up like weeds. Yu zeroed in on high-tech information, which made sense given his field, but he didn't have Feng Yang's nerve. Feng Yang would dabble in those areas, but he wouldn't obsess. E-commerce hadn't hit yet, and he'd need serious capital to play. Innovation wasn't his game, but he still wanted a cut of the profits. Let me think about what you said. It was nice meeting you. Yu took Feng Yang's number, smiled, and left the restaurant. On the drive back, he kept replaying Feng Yang's words. They still sounded far-fetched. Meanwhile, Hugh couldn't sit still when he learned Feng Yang and his crew were in town. Old Jiang kept him on a short leash. But his rebellious streak wasn't going anywhere. Don't make trouble for me. This isn't Love Island. If things go south, no one will save you. Old Jiang shot his brother a cold look and walked out of the hotel. Hugh pushed to his feet, admiring himself in the mirror. Money talked. Finding Feng Yang wasn't hard. Find me a guy named Li Changyu. He owns a tea factory. Where is it? He'd heard Li Changyu was tight with Feng Yang, so Feng Yang wouldn't be able to resist meddling. Hugh's plan was simple. Break Feng Yang completely, humiliate him in front of everyone. This is my factory, big, right? Li Changyu said proudly. It had gone from groundbreaking to expansion in 3 years, thanks to Baker's breakneck growth. It sure is. You put a lot into it, Feng Yang said quietly. As he reached for the door, a shadow flickered in the rearview mirror. Move. Wang Qiong kicked the door open and hauled Feng Yang back. Back off, everybody back off, or this blade doesn't care who it cut. Hugh snarled at Wang Qiong and Li Changyu. He had the knife to Feng Yang's throat. Nothing else mattered. Bro, you're just after money, right? No need for the drama. Feng Yang smiled. He had a few hundred in his pocket. He'd hand it over. A few hundred? What am I, a beggar? You're coming with me to get the cash. Whether Hugh was that stupid or Feng Yang's bait was that good, a few words and he started marching toward the bank. Bro, there are people everywhere, security guards. You really think you can hold me like this? Feng Yang pointed out. Hugh's eyes narrowed. Don't try anything funny, or you'll regret it. I'm not pulling anything, just think about whether this is worth it. Feng Yang offered to give him the pin, take the card to the counter and withdraw it if he didn't trust that. Hugh could follow him inside. Hugh thought it over and decided to go alone. He made Feng Yang repeat the card number and pin several times, then headed for the door. That's when Feng Yang shouted, "Thief! Stop that thief!" Wang Feng didn't even have time to react before the security guards slammed him to the ground. His dagger skittered across the floor and spun to a stop. Caught red-handed, apologies for the mess. Wang Ping'an's smile was razor-thin as he walked away. He knew Wang Feng would face consequences, but the man would be back on the street soon enough. That meant no mercy. He had to handle this cleaned. No loose ends. Feng Yang, find me a place to stay. Don't stick me out in the boonies, and don't worry about rent. The closer to downtown, the better. Wang Ping'an made sure to specify a wealthy neighborhood, lots of money, lots of targets. He didn't explain himself to Feng Yang. Some things didn't need to be said out loud. Sure, any preferences on layout? Feng Yang asked, confused. He couldn't figure out why Wang Ping'an suddenly wanted to rent, but an order was an order. None, just make sure it's in an affluent area. Word of Wang Feng's arrest ripped through Island Coast fast. Someone had conveniently made sure the right details got out. Wang Feng had just kidnapped a string of business bosses in Love Island, and the fallout was massive. Goddamit, what the hell is Wang Feng thinking? Boss Wang nearly went into cardiac arrest when the call came in. After he shook down the details, the picture got ugly. His younger brother had gone after Wang Ping'an for revenge. Hot-headed idiot move, pure and simple. Why can't you keep your head straight? How could you do something this stupid? Boss Wang tried to post bail, but the authorities stonewalled him. The case couldn't close until they heard back from Love Island. Boss Wang, what's the situation? I heard about your brother. Did Wang Ping'an really sink that low? Li Changyu sounded genuinely surprised. He hadn't expected Wang Feng to end up in a cell. It's nothing. I'll handle it. Wang Ping'an won't be sitting pretty for long. Over the next few days, Wang Ping'an walked the floor of Fengyang's flower seedling facility and took notes that he found plenty of room for improvement. Mainly, they needed to speed up production and blow open their sales channels. Selling only to local merchants in Island Coast was a dead-end strategy. If they wanted real growth, they had to feed the entire market. Sell to other regions. If your seedlings are good, there's no problem. Wang Ping'an laid it out. The grade, the quality, the price point, all of it came down to flavor. And the hard truth was, there were only so many ancient tea trees. Not everyone could get their hands on the best leaves. If the top shelf was locked down tight by a monopoly, then they'd carve out the middle and lower tiers. There were always gaps waiting to be exploited. Once they claimed their niche, nobody could touch them. I get all that, but no one else is buying my oolong, and black tea can't crack the high-end market. Fengyang's smile was pained. Price was one hurdle, but the tea plants themselves were another problem entirely. Not necessarily. There are black teas that sell for a fortune, and oolong might not be top tier, but it's not trash either. Wang Ping'an told him that with the right branding and a solid reputation, they could pull in a flood of customers. He told Fengyang to launch an offline marketing push, send their tea to every restaurant and eatery. The premium stuff went to upscale spots. The everyday tea got mass distribution, but first, they needed a flagship tea shop in a prime location. He could host tea ceremonies there to drive foot traffic. Is that really a thing? That sounds like retail. Fengyang frowned. He ran a facility. He'd never even considered going retail. I run food factories myself, and this is exactly what marketing means. Wang Ping'an's voice was flat with certainty. Distribution was one approach, but retail mattered more. Much more. He told Fengyang that too many people dodged retail and put all their chips on distribution. In the end, the contractors and distributors pocketed every dollar of profit while the producers got shafted. To open up real sales channels, they needed a physical storefront. Or better yet, a handful of tea bars or tea restaurants. Business is about constant change. If you cling to one method, it's already dead. Wang Ping'an's words hit Fengyang square in the chest. This market wasn't what he wanted. Given a real chance, he'd spread across all of Island Coast, but now wasn't the moment. Wang Chong, find me a prime location. I'm about to open 3 flower seedling shops. When Wang Chong got that call, he froze for a solid 30 seconds. Island Coast was only so big, and Wang Ping'an wanted to drop 3 shops right out of the gate. Boss, you really think Island Coast is that easy? Our sales team could be running themselves ragged all day. Wang Chong's voice was frayed with frustration. He said Island Coast's economy was a completely different animal. Every strategy they'd tried had cratered. Nothing was gaining traction. That's inevitable. If you could take Island Coast without a fight, what pressure would you feel anywhere else? Wang Ping'an actually laughed. Life was brutal. Why would business be any softer? That whole afternoon, Boss Wang hemorrhaged money trying to stamp out fires. He wanted to settle privately with every boss Wang Feng had screwed over. Only cash could sew their mouths shut. We'll drop it if you pay. Do you have any idea what your brother put us through? The bosses agreed to let it go, but only if Boss Wang coughed up 5 million to cover their losses. Boss Wang's vision went red. 5 million? What exactly is your life worth? My brother didn't even lay a hand on you. Then we're done here. Several of us are in the hospital right now. The meeting detonated on the spot. Boss Wang had to scrap the whole plan. He was already at his absolute limit with Wang Ping'an, and he hadn't even established a foothold in Island Coast. How was he supposed to rise up this fast? Brother Lee, how much capital do you have on hand? I want to start a new kind of media center. Boss Wang explained that public relations was the hottest industry right now. Too many businessmen had no idea how to manage their problems or handle the blowback. Those blind spots had consequences, and he wanted to be the one who made them disappear. In plain terms, take people's money and erase their troubles. That's a damn good idea. I'll front you 5 million. Lee Chang-yu said he could move that amount, but it would have to come from the group account. 5 million won't cut it. I need at least 10 to launch. Boss Wang's reply was blunt. If Lee Chang-yu couldn't shift that kind of money, he'd short the market himself. The stock market was perfect for that. As long as he got his hands on the right data, he could pull it off. Fine, but if anything goes sideways, it's on your head, and I want 70% of the profits. Lee Chang-yu never made a move without a guaranteed payoff. Without his cut, he'd never agree. You might not know much about bubble tea, but a lot of it is actually brewed from real tea leaves. Chen Cheng explained that the milk tea industry was exploding right now. The business model was simple. Use minimal additives, mostly real tea leaves and high-quality milk, and you could charge a premium. Most milk tea today was packed with powdered creamer, and that stuff was terrible for your health. If he was going to build a brand, he couldn't cut corners. He had to nail every part of the process, reputation, quality, everything. Otherwise, it would be nothing but foam, and an industry like that wasn't worth keeping. But Chen, I don't know the first thing about running a tea shop. This is totally new territory for me. Wang Ping'an let out a dry laugh. He wasn't making excuses. He genuinely knew nothing. A complete rookie. What if he sank everything he had? You don't have to know anything. The process is so simple a kid could run it. Chen Cheng wasn't bragging. There was nothing complicated about it. The only real question was the milk source. They needed a proper dairy farm, and there wasn't a decent one anywhere in the south, thanks to the terrain and climate differences. East or west? Wang Ping'an asked, confused. He wanted to grasp the details. If he went in blind, he'd be stumbling in the dark. West. Chen Cheng told Wang Ping'an to meet up with his friend Zhu Kaiyang, who would lock down a reliable milk source. There were only a handful of good dairy bases in the whole country. Securing high-quality milk wasn't easy, so that burden fell on Zhu Kaiyang. Chen Cheng needed that supply too. If the industry was only going to rise, why not go all in? And with a steady source, he could execute flawlessly. When Chen Cheng had all the pieces in place, he hadn't met a single person who could beat him. Got it. I'm on it. After Wang Ping'an left, Chen Cheng still had one more thing to do. He'd promised President Yu he'd solve every problem within 3 days. Of course, he had to prove his capability. If he couldn't even hit that standard, there was no point continuing. The Mingju market isn't as simple as you think. You keep buying me tea, but I can't bet my entire future on you. President Yu was direct. They just parted ways not long ago. Businessmen chase profit, but if you want long-term gains, you can't just focus on short-term wins. Chen Cheng said that was exactly why so many businessmen never maximized their ventures. They all tried to hoard the profits quietly and ended up losing their partners. The partnership was the key point. One person couldn't eat a whole cake alone. They'd choke. Point 2 was different. Point 3 or 4 started feeling crowded. You know the value of slow growth better than I do. I wouldn't be saying this if I wasn't dead certain. Chen Cheng pointed out that the stock and securities market was a mess right now, everyone pulling in different directions, half of them didn't even know where to move, and the big players couldn't make sense of the logic. The shock of the last 2 months has already washed out the whole securities industry. You think retail investors can just bounce back after being fleeced like that? The question hooked President Yu, pulling him right in. Chen Cheng's angle cut deep. You leave me speechless. I'll admit, your thinking is way ahead of the curve. President Yu wasn't wrong. Chen Cheng moved like he came from a different dimension. Every move was a precision strike, and he always landed it exactly where it needed to be. Not really, everything I do is calculated. If I didn't believe it would work, I wouldn't bother. Over the past couple of days, Chen Cheng had zeroed in on one company. He said his big comeback tomorrow depended on it. What company? President Yu asked, curious. He knew every company in Mingju inside and out, but there weren't many with real potential, especially ones willing to take outside investment. That's the Mingju way. They'd rather keep full control than make any compromises. He said it plainly, this had been going on forever. You're wrong. I'll show you this industry rise tomorrow. Chen Cheng slid a business card across the table. A software company. When President Yu saw the name, he couldn't help but laugh. If you said any other company, I might believe you, but you pick this lousy one. He explained that a few years ago, when the software industry was still immature, the market was full of scams, importing everything from abroad. People were new to it. How were they supposed to know how powerful the internet would become? But now, software development was weak. Forget this particular company. Even if Chen Cheng could land a deal with the top software firm in Mingju, President Yu wouldn't be impressed. That industry was dead, there was nothing left in it. Since you're so stubborn, I guess I'll have to save you from yourself. Chen Cheng smiled slightly. He wasn't bothered. Convincing the man in one shot would have been too easy anyway. Giant Elephant Software might be in a death spiral, maybe even past the point of no return, but their system and business model were still solid. They hadn't been shaken yet. My name is Chen Cheng. I'd like to see your chairman. After being shown in, Chen Cheng faced a middle-aged man who looked completely defeated. The ashtray in front of him was overflowing. The stress was eating him alive. Mr. Chen, have a seat. I won't bother with formalities. What brings you here? The man asked wearily. He clearly hadn't slept in days, his energy long drained. I'll keep it short. I'm here to save your company, buy it, and build it up. The man's eyes snapped half awake. Someone's actually willing to put money into this mess right now. Are you out of your mind? Wang Ping'an wasn't surprised by the look on the man's face. A shock like that landed better in small doses. Not everyone could take it straight. I'm sorry, lost my composure. Please, Mr. Wang, go ahead. Boss Wang could barely stay seated. He wobbled to his feet and poured a cup of tea. Forget the tea, how about a cold drink instead? Wang Ping'an smiled and pulled 2 cans of herbal tea from his bag. They weren't ice cold, but the taste was premium. Thanks. The man took the can with a grin. The flavor was nothing like he remembered. When he asked what the play was, Wang Ping'an just shook his head. Not yet. I need to see what happens next. Right then, the office door burst open again. The assistant rushed in, out of breath. $1 million order. $1 million order was a lifeline to IN software. $1 million wasn't pocket change. It took money to develop, sure, but innovation was the real cost. The upfront and back-end work was brutal. That order isn't mine. Don't get excited. Wang Ping'an cleared his throat. But if I were you, I'd turn it down, because what I'm about to discuss with you is going to change everything. Boss Wang saw the look on Wang Ping'an's face and, without quite knowing why, turned to the assistant. We're not taking any more orders. He knew scraping by wouldn't save him. Survive this month, fall behind the next. That was the truth. If he could have spotted the real problem sooner, he would have turned things around already. I have to admire your guts. You just made the best decision of your life. Wang Ping'an stood slowly, walked to the desk, and sat down. Boss Wang, I assume you know who I am? Wang Ping'an's identity was no secret. The whole of Yuju had been shaken by that prodigy from the moment he arrived. He'd dominated the southern market. Of course I know. Mr. Wang, you flatter me. Even as out of touch as I am, I couldn't miss your reputation. He meant it. There were few in the market who hadn't heard of Wang Ping'an. Good. I'm prepared to invest 10 million into your company for development. In return, I want 60% ownership. Wang Ping'an paused. If you accept, it's an acquisition. An acquisition, 10 million for 60%. In normal times, that was a stretch. Given the current mess, it was more than fair. Boss Wang's confusion was obvious. 10 million could buy a lot. A running software company with similar shares. Even why would Wang Ping'an do it? Simple, because of your brand. Wang Ping'an leaned back. A lot of people still trust the Shun Group name. It pioneered the domestic market. Younger people might not know it, but the middle-aged crowd, they do, especially the educated ones. That name carries weight. You're right. I'll take the deal, but have you really looked into our company? Boss Wang laughed, but it came out awkward. We're on our last legs. Your 10 million could vanish next month. We can't hold on. That's not an excuse. Wang Ping'an shook his head. Anyone serious about their business doesn't just walk away. The situation is still promising. Shun Group isn't worthless. If this were some shell company, we wouldn't be talking, but it's Shun Group. That name alone is worth something. So what do I do? Boss Wang still looked lost. The plan felt hazy. Right now, you call every brand you've ever partnered with. They're the only ones who can keep you alive. Money without channels is useless. We lock down the entire distribution network. That's the only way this works. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Starting a new company would be easier than acquiring one drowning in debt. Okay. Wang Ping'an spent the entire afternoon in that office, drinking tea while Boss Wang made call after call. For the man, these contacts were his last hope. Wang Ping'an could see he knew exactly how to win those channels back. Shun Group's influence had been huge back then. There wasn't much competition, but the pivot into the Polar Development Game project sent the company into a nosedive. The domestic market is closed to you. You really think I'll work with Shun Group again? One after another, the bosses turned him down. They'd rather partner with a no-name company. Shun Group was a sinking ship. Don't beg. Wang Ping'an cut in. Anyone who agrees, bring them in. Business doesn't allow groveling. Besides, this is my investment now. I'm not letting Shun Group stay down forever. All right. I'll come right over. In the end, only one boss agreed to come see for himself. Just one. A far cry from what Boss Wang had hoped. Boss Wang, I know you're trying to make a comeback, but I'm not interested in your company. The man got straight to the point. If you're just looking for someone to drag down with you, forget it. I'm not stupid, but if you're serious about going all the way, I can lend a hand. If I'm not mistaken, you're Wang Changsheng, chairman of Murdoch Media, right? Wang Ping'an gave a faint smile and greeted him. Wang Changsheng startled. He hadn't noticed anyone else in the room. Let me introduce myself. I'm Wang Ping'an, chairman of Shun Group and his new partner. Without Li Changyo's introduction, Feng Yang would never have believed this man was Wang Ping'an. He would have figured the guy had lost his mind. Everyone knew Li Changyo's company was barely holding on. Anyone stupid enough to get mixed up in that mess was begging for trouble. If it were him, he wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. But Mr. Wang, he was impossible to read. Feng Yang forced a smile as he greeted Wang Ping'an. The man standing in front of him didn't match the image he'd built in his head at all. Surprised I'm so young? Wang Ping'an gestured for Li Changyu to pour the tea. A business partner isn't a wife. Age doesn't matter. He wanted a real conversation with Ping'an. It practically felt like fate. If it had been anyone else, he wouldn't have bothered, but this was Ping'an, the same guy who, 3 years from now, would transform his studio into something impressive. If they joined forces right now, they could compress that timeline into a single year. A top-tier game engine is the most powerful rendering system on the market, domestically or internationally. Plenty of people use it, Lee Chang-yu said, his tone flat. Under Wang Ping'an's stare, he didn't dare hold anything back. But our current templates aren't good enough. We can't produce anything decent. We can go the licensing route, Wang Ping'an said. See what's trending overseas and bring it over here. He pointed out that software theft ran rampant in the computer and software industries. Pirated versions didn't need servers, legitimate ones did. If they locked down the licensing rights, they could operate smoothly for at least 5 years. In 5 years, the entire industry would be reshaped beyond recognition. That was exactly why Wang Ping'an was so hell-bent on leaving his mark. He never took a risk unless he was dead sure. If the return on investment wasn't at least 10 times what he put in, he wouldn't bother. Fate had handed him a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There was no way he was wasting it. Right now there are only a handful of big games making waves, Ping'an said, his eyes sharp. He knew the industry inside out, specializing in online games. Shooters, MMOs, plus the growing sim and RPG markets, the titles that have already blown up. I envy them. Let's see if we can get licensing rights, Wang Ping'an said. If we lock those down, we can run the whole show. He told them not to be afraid of hearing no. Nothing in life was guaranteed. Then he spotted it. A game that had just surfaced in its final testing phase. The feedback had been lukewarm, so the developers were looking for a buyer. What game? Wang Ping'an asked, frowning. Opportunities like this didn't come around often. The one that stuck in his memory was Half-Life. After that, maybe the game. The game. The moment he heard the name, Wang Ping'an snapped into overdrive. He told Lee Chang-yu to make the call right now. Buy that game, no matter the price. Don't hesitate. Right. We're considering purchasing this game. Lee Chang-yu was still explaining on the phone when Wang Ping'an couldn't take it anymore. He gestured sharply for the man to move faster. Back when the game first launched as a test product, the first 2 rounds of testing had been total disasters. Only the 3rd round caught fire, and then it spread like wildfire across the country. Players spent without restraint. Some of them dropped hundreds of millions. Landing this game will be one of our biggest wins, Wang Ping'an said. He knew how short a game's novelty cycle could be. One game wasn't enough. If they were going to do this, they had to push all the way, keep releasing new titles, blend every mode and genre they could. But first, they needed server infrastructure. A large corporation was already sitting on that. Looks like fate is on my side, Wang Ping'an said, grinning from ear to ear. He could already see the future. But first, they had to buy the game. When they arrived at the game development company, they found out someone had already put down a deposit. We made the call. The price is negotiable, Wang Ping'an said. The final call belonged to the developer, but his sincerity was obvious. $3 million. The game is yours. The price wasn't steep. $3 million was a drop in the bucket for game development. The real cost would come from setting up servers and running operations. $3 million is fair. I'm not going to haggle, Wang Ping'an said. I can transfer the money right now, but I need your team to hand over all the backups. He didn't want any copyright issues sneaking up later. He was a businessman, not someone chasing trouble. Of course, once we sign the contract, we'll make the announcement immediately. The developer was nothing like a large corporation. They specialized in game development, employed a huge stable of original artists, and ranked among the top names in the industry, they wouldn't pull anything shady. 3 million, for one game? Feng Yang sucked in a breath. A second-round test product that flopped. You couldn't give that away for a few $100. You're wrong, Wang Ping'an said with a smile. I guarantee you, this is where our company's first real profit is going to come from. He told Feng Yang he could start thinking about signing the contract. Contract? You're not planning to join us? Wang Ping'an asked. Two choices. I buy you out, or you bring your company in and I give you 30% of the shares. It was that simple. Equity distribution didn't require some technical masterstroke. To Wang Ping'an, this was small potatoes. I need to think about it. Feng Yang was caught completely off guard. He hadn't expected Wang Ping'an to be so direct. Sure, he'd wanted to cooperate, but folding his company into someone else's wasn't a small decision. Even if he agreed, his own people might not get on board. To them, this needed more time. Don't worry about anything else. I'll handle it, Wang Ping'an said. We're not short on talent. If anyone doesn't want to come on board, let them walk. I have the budget to bring in better people. That's good for the company. Give me one night to think about it.